All right, good morning to everyone. We're going to get started. I want to welcome everybody this morning to our general meeting for the month of November here on a Saturday morning. So I do want to call the meeting to order. We have the council attendance, a moment of silence, acceptance of the agenda, rules of order, follow-up from the last general meeting, as well as we have 4 presentations this morning, one from Akwesasne, one on the Dundee land claim, another on the smart cities Akwesasne, and the proposed natural gas expansion onto Gawanoge. Also provide an update on cannabis. We'll take business from the floor, pass a resolution accepting the last minutes, and make a few announcements. So that is the agenda for this morning. We will move the natural gas presentation to the first presentation for this morning. Our consultant here will join us for that and then be on his way for the morning. So could I have a motion to accept the agenda? Moved by Tim, second by Julie, all in favor? All right, so we have 2 members of council. One is out sick, that is April Adams Phillips is out sick today, and Chief Joe Lazor is traveling back from a meeting. So we had initially planned to have a council photo for the council Christmas cards. You'll notice that everybody's wearing their best today, lots of festive colors. But unfortunately now we're short 2 members, so we will take care of them later. But after the meeting, we're having to take a few photo shots that we'll use for our council Christmas cards. So as part of our cancellation meeting protocol, we'd like to observe a moment of silence for those members that we have lost since the last general meeting of last month. So I'll ask that we please observe a moment of silence. Thank you. And as you do know, that the last general meeting was relocated because there was a death in the community in one of the districts, and the general meeting was located to Gawanoge. So the rules of order for today's, this morning's general meeting is that we'll have our meeting start at 10 o'clock. We'll go to about noon thereabouts, depending on the conversation which we're having in the presentations. Personal issues will not be dealt with in the public forum. These meetings are recorded, so the camera is here and council is on it. We ask that you please not address staff members of the Mohawk Council's names directly. We will do our best to keep those members of the Mohawk Council who are staff, not to identify them, but the Mohawk Council members is fine. So personal issues will not be dealt with in this forum. If you do have something that you want to talk about that's of personal nature, we will talk one-on-one with you about that. If there are questions that are relevant to the presentation, please raise your hand. We'll make a list of speakers. We ask that your questions please be on topic what the presentation is. If there are other items that you want to speak about, there is the business from the floor, and we can speak generally about all other items, so please keep that in mind. As well, any items that we cannot answer or that we need to do additional research on, we will take a list of them and report them back at the next general meeting as follow-up items. So that is our rules of order for today's general meeting. We will now turn to the follow-up items from the last general meeting of October 25th. Which is all in your packages, or at the back here has all of the information which we will be discussing this morning. So one of the items that was raised at the last general meeting was about Sugarbush and whether it had been added to the territory through an additions to reserve process. So there is an explanation in the package for you about how the status of Sugarbush came to be that it is. This information will also be distributed via either the newsletter or the Indian Times, because it was requested that it be broadly put out. So I'll go over that really quickly. So Sugarbush Island is part of the land reserved for the Mohawks of Akwesasne pursuant to the Treaty of Swagachi at 1760 and the Royal Proclamation of 1763. Like other parts of the reserve, it was held by non-natives under lease in the 19th century. However, is not part of the 1888 surrender, as it was occupied and held by Mohawks and therefore is not part of the claim. Since that time, the Mohawks of Akwesasne have exclusive occupation of Sugarbush Island. Canada continues to administer the island under the application provisions of the Indian Act and has issued a number of certificates of possession to members confirming their lawful possession. As of 2007, there are 29 CPs issued for Sugarbush Island. Canada and the MCA continue to review the chain of title to Sugarbush Island and will take appropriate actions if and when required to confirm to reserve status of Sugarbush Island and to eliminate any doubts. One option that has been considered is to confirm the reserve status of Sugarbush Island through the Federal Additions to Reserve process. Until there is a defined decision on the title, the MCA has no basis to treat Sugarbush Island different than any parts of the Akwesasne Reserve number 15. So that's a bit of a technical answer on the question that was asked. If you want a little bit more information, we can arrange for you to chat with some of our Aboriginal rights and research folks. So the second item is do the Akwesasne laws apply to Sugarbush Island? So Akwesasne laws apply to Sugarbush Island, which have been set aside by Canada for the use and benefits of the St. Regis Indians of Band of the province of Quebec and remains an integral part of the Mohawk territory of Akwesasne. So regardless of the status of the land, we continue to exercise our authority over those lands as part of the reserve, which I think that is would be expected of leadership to continue to do. And what is the validity of the chiefs who live in the Sugarbush Island? So the residents of the St. Regis residents of Sugarbush Island reside in the district of Akwesasne for the purpose of the Akwesasne election law. So the Akwesasne election law doesn't define explicitly say that Sugarbush Island is not part of the reserve. We exercise our authority over it. The Akwesasne election law is applicable to all of the territory. Therefore, the Sugarbush Island is part of the district of Akwesasne. So those are our follow-up items from the last general meeting, and again, we will make those, publish those in appropriate means to share with the community abroad. Okay, so we will now turn to our first presentation of this morning, which when we accepted the agenda, we moved the natural gas expansion project up to be the first presentation of this morning. So I do want to introduce Pete Valaquette, who is joining us this morning. He is a former employee of Enbridge Gas, who we have asked to assist us in providing information to the community. So we have been doing this for a number of months now, a number of presentations here on Gawanoge. We've done one at the general meeting last month, at the general meeting today, and we want to just share information about what natural gas is, as well as what what a potential expansion project could look like, and what some of the elements of that would be if the residents of Gawanoge are agreeable to expand natural gas onto Mohawk. So we have a bit of a presentation. Again, these are in your packages that are at the back of the room, so if you'd like to follow along. Okay.
Do you want to take the start as well?
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay. We've done a little bit of a tag team with this before. So basically, the history of the natural gas pipeline was installed in 1962. It's a 12-inch line that was installed to feed upstate New York, St. Lawrence gas specifically. There's always been, from my understanding, interest over the years in Cornwall Island residents hooking up to that line. When I was at Enbridge, actually, there was a gentleman named Sid Laffin that came to the table and talked about potentially setting up some natural gas. There were other studies that were on as well around the potential of building a cogen facility on Cornwall Island. So Enbridge was also asked to look at the potential of natural gas distribution. Unfortunately, when the pipeline was constructed, though, it was designated as serving only one customer, and that was the upstate customer of St. Lawrence Gas. And then plus the fact that during those years, Enbridge only compensated the Federal Bridge Corporation to have that pipeline in that corridor. It created a fair amount of animosity between Enbridge and the MCA Akwesasne, as the community felt that at that point, since there really wasn't much of an opportunity to hook up, and Akwesasne wasn't receiving any financial compensation, there was really no benefit to having the line there. With the successful negotiations that culminated in 2009 with the signing of a cooperation and land use agreement, Akwesasne finally got compensation from Enbridge for the line, a lump sum for past and a go-forward payment of approximately $100,000 a year. The agreement also has a section in it on economic development where it talks about a commitment, or it is a firm commitment, to explore natural gas distribution on Cornwall Island. Add to the fact that the government of Ontario has announced that they really want to expand access to natural gas so that more people can share in the benefits. There's now potential for Cornwall Island to connect to the pipeline and enjoy the benefits. However, again, the project would only proceed if the community supports it. What is natural gas? Natural gas is basically it's a naturally occurring gas called methane. It's lighter than air, and it's actually odorless, colorless. And why we smell it? It's because there's a chemical called mercaptan that gets added, that rotten egg smell, and it's just a safety measure to help people detect a leak. If there is a leak, now you can smell it, because other than that, methane is odorless. Where did methane come from? Well, for the most part, methane was formed millions of years ago when layers of decomposing plant and animal matter were exposed to heat and pressure under the ground. Methane formed that way is referred to as thermogenic methane. Methane also results from the anaerobic decay of organic matter. And anaerobic decay simply means it's decaying in absence of oxygen. So actually, methane, farm animals, there's the amount of beef on the planet, there's questions as cows fart, if you want to say, methane is produced. Septic systems produce methane, landfills produce methane, water treatment plants produce methane. Methane formed in this manner is referred to as biogenic methane. It also is sometimes referred to as I mentioned above, biogas or renewable natural gas, RNG. Before, I guess, if you look back in history, before there was an understanding of what methane was, it really posed a mystery. If you go through history, there's stories of basically flame coming out of the ground. And ultimately that would have been methane escaping from the ground that would have been ignited most probably by lightning strikes. So there are stories again of just the ground burning. Power first harnessed it's believed to have been first harnessed around 500 BC in ancient China, where they were using bamboo to build crude pipelines that would take the gas seeping from the ground to another location where they would actually boil seawater to extract salt for cooking and preservation. These are the underground formations where you see typically gas. On the left you'd see a conventional gas, and that's called unassociated gas because there's no oil with it. On the right hand side you see conventional gas, but that's referred to as associated gas because there's oil in there as well. And then you have shale gas down below, tight gas, and then you have coal-based methane up above. Gas distribution, it's interesting. The history of gas distribution goes back to the 1800s, but it wasn't natural gas, it wasn't methane, it was a manufactured gas. And they were basically first founded in England in the early 1800s, but eventually made their way to North America by the 1820s. Manufactured gas, or was often known as coal gas or water gas, it was produced in facilities that were referred to as the gas works and distributed through underground pipes, much like natural gas is distributed today. Initially, manufactured gas was primarily used for street lighting. Shortly after, interior lighting. However, with networks in place, its uses grew, and that included cooking, heating, and hot water heating. It's hard to see on the right-hand side. You see an old-fashioned street light with a gentleman with a long pole. Those gentlemen were referred to at the time as lamplighters. And every evening they would go down the streets with their little torch and light all the gas lamps that lined the streets, and then in the morning they would come out and shut them all down. With the discovery of large reserves of natural gas in North America and the construction of pipelines to transport it to urban centers, manufactured gas was slowly phased out and replaced by natural gas in the mid 20th century, so around the 50s. And those gas works were decommissioned. Initially, some of that same infrastructure that was used to distribute manufactured gas was used to distribute natural gas, but then that's largely been replaced since then. A little bit of statistics for Ontario. Ontario, approximately 3.5 million homes and businesses are connected to the natural gas distribution network owned by Enbridge and Union, and they count on it to meet their energy needs. In fact, more than 3/4 of Ontario homes are heated with natural gas, and natural gas in one way or another meets over 1/3 of all Ontario's energy needs. In a residential context, you've got furnaces, and so you use it for heating, hot water, cooking. Clothes dryers can operate on natural gas. Outdoor cooking, you can connect barbecues directly to natural gas, as well as pool heating. Commercial, you'll see a lot of use in heating and hot water and cooking, especially restaurants. Restaurants all depend on natural gas and or propane. I should substitute propane as well as is a gas, it's just a different gas. But the old expression, you're cooking with gas, it really is the way to go. Agricultural, heating, greenhouses and corn drying, huge amount of use for that, as well as in the dairy industry, a lot of hot water. Industrial, you'll see a lot of heating and hot water, as well as process load. And then of course you've got power generation and cogeneration, which is combined heat and electricity. And transportation, it's interesting, you don't see much of it in the Canadian context, although it is a Canadian invention. Vehicles operating on natural gas, actually Cornwall still, I believe, have some natural gas buses. But if you look to the United States and the rest of the world, you have cars, buses, fleet vehicles, garbage trucks, transport trucks, off-road equipment, and even the railway industry is looking at using natural gas as a transportation fuel. Transport trucks right now, there's a pilot going on between Gaz Metro in Montreal and Robert Trucking. You've seen the big Robert trucks probably whipping along the 401. They're actually running on liquefied natural gas. There's actually a terminal set up off Boundary Road where they fill up with LNG, liquefied natural gas. And again, it's purely about the economics and the emissions. Natural gas safety, it is one of the safest sources of energy and has an excellent safety record. Gas distribution utilities continuously work with government personnel and industry participants, such as the manufacturers, suppliers, and installers, to develop standards and codes for both gas distribution and appliance use. It's delivered safely through a network of buried steel and plastic pipelines, and it's delivered into homes and businesses at very low pressures. I'll get into the pressures a little later as we talk about the potential project. These networks also include safety features such as strategically located shutoff or isolation valves, as well as what are called excess flow valves that actually automatically shut if they detect too much flow. And as well, to prevent buried pipelines from being damaged, gas distribution utilities all have extensive damage prevention awareness programs, and also offer free pipeline locating for anyone who may be digging near a gas pipeline. They also have proactive programs for inspection and maintenance of their infrastructure, including leak survey programs, whereby the entire network is physically surveyed with leak detection equipment. Natural gas is also lighter than air, and so if it is unintentionally released outdoors, it can safely dissipate into the atmosphere, since it requires a source of ignition in order to ignite. It cannot spontaneously combust. And in terms of regulations, in Ontario, all new pipelines must be approved by pipeline inspectors. So as pipe is going in the ground, there are actually pipeline inspectors who are certified by the TSSA, the Technical Standards and Safety Authority. They've all had to take courses before they can become a certified pipeline inspector. As well, in Ontario, all appliance installation and service work must be completed by trained individuals who are also certified through that same safety authority. In addition, most gas distribution utilities all offer first responder training, typically targeting fire departments to ensure they are well equipped to deal with fires where natural gas is present. Natural gas versus other fuels. You can see the various molecules of the different fuels listed here. Natural gas has 1 carbon, 4 hydrogen, propane, 3 carbon, 8 hydrogen, and fuel oil or diesel, 12 carbon and up to 24 hydrogen. Because of its lower carbon content, when it is burned, natural gas produces 20% less greenhouse emissions than propane and about 25% less than fuel oil. Natural gas versus other fuels from a financial perspective, and again, prices do change. However, at current prices, on average, it would cost a typical household that uses natural gas for heating and water approximately 50% less than fuel oil, and about 36% less than electricity, and about 30% less than propane on an annual basis. Natural gas is a greenhouse gas. Yes, methane is, and again, the main component of natural gas is methane. It's a potent greenhouse gas. That's why there's a lot of regulations in place to capture methane escaping from facilities such as landfills and wastewater treatment facilities. Once captured, this biomethane, biogas, can be burned to produce heat, electricity, or even power vehicles such as garbage trucks. Waste management and Veolia, especially you see this quite often in the States, although in Ottawa they are burning natural gas. Waste management has 12 garbage trucks that run on natural gas, but in a lot of U.S. jurisdictions they'll actually capture the landfill gas from the landfill site, and they'll scrub out impurities, and actually they'll use it to power their garbage trucks. So basically the gas coming out of the ground, that methane that's produced with the decay of all the materials in the landfill, is being used to power the garbage trucks. Many European countries, they actually take the gas, the methane from landfill and or wastewater treatment plants and process it, again, to remove impurities, and put it right into the natural gas distribution systems. So again, that comes back to the context of a renewable gas component. Gas distribution, utilities, and all pipeline operators also have significant regulations around them such that they have to have measures to minimize any leaks within their distribution or transportation systems. Hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, it's a technique that's been used since the 50s to increase the production of oil, natural gas, and water wells. Since then, it's been estimated it's been used over 2 million times. It's a practice that is used intensively in the oil and gas industry around the world. Technique involves injecting a liquid consisting mostly of water, about 90% water, about 9.5% sand, and about 0.5% chemical additives, at high pressure into the well to fracture the surrounding rock in order to open up veins and increase the well's output. In more recent times, it's been used to extensively access unconventional oil and natural gas from deep rock formations anywhere from 2 to 6 kilometers below the Earth's surface that would otherwise not be economically viable. As a side note, I have a water well. My water well years ago was not producing much water, so I actually looked into hydraulic fracturing for my water well. I was just told, hey, my water well was too shallow and it was not a viable well to actually fracture. But it is something that is out there to improve water wells as well. Although it's been used extensively for about 70 years, there has been issues in certain jurisdictions, basically lack of regulation or proper regulation that resulted in some incidents where there was groundwater contamination. And as a result, this fracking or hydraulic fracturing has become quite controversial in recent years. Proponents believe that hydraulic fracturing to increase a well or a well's production and or access wells or resources that were previously inaccessible basically offsets our reliance on foreign imports of oil and natural gas from Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, etc. And it keeps the costs low. Opponents believe that the significant water consumption with hydraulic fracturing, and again it is potentially millions of gallons per well, plus the possibility that has happened where there was contamination outweigh these benefits. In terms of Enbridge, and this question has come up before, Enbridge does not frack and Enbridge does not produce. It only transports and distributes oil and natural gases, so it does not use hydraulic fracturing. However, the commodities that would be in its pipelines would definitely, in personal opinion, have come from wells that were fractured. I don't believe it's possible to buy gasoline from a gas station that doesn't come from an oil well somewhere that wasn't fractured. Excuse me. Proposed expansion on Cornwall Island. The project, if it does proceed, would involve tapping into the existing 12-inch steel pipeline that crosses Cornwall Island and feeds upstate New York, and installing a pressure reducing station to drop the pressure to about 60 pounds per square inch, and installing a total of about 21 kilometers of new natural gas line along Island Road. We brought our little show and tell stuff. This is the piece of 12-inch steel that would be underground crossing the island, bringing gas to upstate New York. It's actually quite heavy. I can pass it around or people can come and see it after. A small section of 2-inch steel would be tapped or teed on to this 12-inch steel to bring the gas to a station, a small station, not much larger than probably put these two tables together. Again, that station would drop the pressure to 60 pounds. And then there you see Island Road would be piped with approximately 2 kilometers of 4-inch plastic pipe. That's the thick gas plastic pipe. That's the 4, and then you would see another 6 kilometers approximately of 2-inch plastic pipe. Side streets would be fed or piped with a total of about 13 kilometers of 1.25-inch plastic pipe. And you can see this is called a fusion fitting. The pipes are all actually melted together. Then basically homes and businesses would be fed with what's called a service, and this is a 1/2-inch service. Large businesses would maybe require a larger pipe, but typically a 1/2-inch service is good for serving a home. You can see that this is what's called a service T. It gets melted onto the 1.25-inch pipe, or for residences that would be on Island Road, it would get melted onto the 4 or the 2-inch plastic pipe. Once it gets to the house, that plastic pipe gets to the house, the 1/2-inch service, it comes out of the ground as a rigid pipe. You have a pressure regulator again to drop the pressure. At that point, it drops the pressure down to 1/4 of a PSI. So 60 PSI, I think there's a lot of tires out there, people on their car from 35 to 60 PSI in their tire. It gets reduced to 1/4 of a PSI before entering the building. If approved, this construction would take approximately 21 weeks from start to finish. Again, if approved, it appears that spring, summer of 2020 would be the earliest possible construction window. And the total cost of the project right now is approximately $8.4 million. This is just a map, and it basically shows exactly what I just described, which is a small station installed here near the crossroads. And again, all of the pipe up and down Island Road and off onto the side streets. That's about it.
Yes, go ahead.
Is that bare pipe that you're putting on, and like you're tying in, keying in?
Yeah. Yeah.
All that pipe there, the steel pipe, has to be jeeped, right? You're gonna
Oh, it's all
hold it-
oh, yeah, yeah,
hold
yeah.
it.
Yes, I didn't want to get, but you obviously know how all this works. This pipe is all coated. It's not, I'm just showing you a piece of bare steel
Yeah.
pipe. It's all coated, all the joints are taped. The term jeeping refers to using a wire, a series of wires that they run over top of the pipe to listen, so that if there's any little pinhole in the coating, you're going to get a sound that's going to tell you the coating isn't sound in that spot. So they would come back and make sure that the coating was there, so that there was no bare steel exposed to the ground whatsoever. The term is called jeeping. I just didn't.
I have a
Good
question
question.
too.
Yep.
You mentioned that it has a series of shut-off valves,
Yes.
pressure increases.
Oh, those are called, it's not a pressure increase. There's two kinds of valves. You're going to have, oh, and I'm sorry, I'm walking around, which is making your life difficult.
There's a pressure is not going to increase, it's going to decrease.
Yes.
So is that?
It's a flow. What happens is every single service that goes to a home, there's what's called an excess flow valve. And basically it's designed so that if this pipe got severed, or if a pipe inside the home,
No, I'm talking about the main lines.
oh, the main lines, there's no excess flow lines in the main lines. What there are in those main lines are strategically located shut-off valves.
So does that work, whether the pressure increases or decreases?
No, they're manually shut off. Those valves are strategically set up. So
Who's going to run to a fire? It's going to be on fire, right?
no. If they had to shut down, if a section of the pipeline was damaged, they can shut off a valve to cut the gas off completely to that section, and then make the repairs and then turn the gas back on. The excess flow valves are to protect the actual homes and businesses, so that if there's ever too much gas flowing in, it automatically shuts.
So what do you mean? Somebody has to manually shut it off?
Yes, those valves.
I thought you just said it come and shut off electronically.
No.
That's what you just said? That's what you just told us?
Didn't say electronically, it said those valves.
I'm asking him.
The home.
No, these automatically shut. The ones here that go into the home, if they detect excess flow, they automatically shut. The other valves that are placed strategically allow them to shut off sections of the network if repairs need to be done because of a damage.
So that's what my question is. They have to be shut off.
Manually, correct.
But you told us that it was shut off electronically.
No, I said the excess flow valves.
That's just that part, right?
Yes, that's just this.
So I'm talking about the main line.
The main line is not automatic. The main line has valves.
It should be in the. It should be, right?
That's a question you'd need to ask Enbridge. That's design criteria that they use. This particular feature, excess flow valve, is to protect the home, protect the business. If it detects too much gas flowing, it shuts off.
Because if you detect a leak somewhere, it's going to take at least half hour for whoever is responsible to shut that off.
No, you would call the minute you smell a leak, and typically if it's a leak outdoors, as I indicated, natural gas or methane is lighter than air, it just goes up safely, you'll smell it. That's why people call in the leak, they would be smelling it.
So what if there's a thunderstorm, lightning hits it?
I guess that's a possibility. Whether that happens day to day, I can't speak to that.
Not only that, anybody would be walking by and will see what it is, right?
That is a possibility as well. Natural gas does only ignite under certain circumstances, meaning it's got to be within a limit, and if it's outdoors, it's just going straight up. Cheryl?
You mentioned there was 3.5 million homes in Ontario that are connected and being serviced. How many First Nations, other than what we're trying to attempt here on Going Again, have a natural distribution network?
Six Nations is the only one I'm aware of.
That's the only other one?
Yes, the only one I'm aware of,
And
yes.
do you know how many homes are connected to
In
that?
Six Nations, I'm not sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We
Company in Six Nations. Nunavut?
No. I think it's called Six Nations Gas, I believe. There was a session held about 4 years ago, I believe, where the president of that gas distribution utility came and spoke with the MCA, with the St. Regis Mohawk tribe, and talked about the advantages of natural gas distribution there, because there was a discussion in those days about potentially looking at a full distribution network for Cornwall Island, St. Regis, Sny, plus the tribe side on the New York. Yes.
Is council going to take questions after he's done?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, thank you.
There's a question over here.
Great presentation. However, 1962, the line came across. Where did it go from the natural gas? Who connected? Who benefited from it?
That was upstate New York.
How much money how much money has the companies made for that transportation since 1962? Probably billions, right? It's hard to figure.
No, it's a small.
Really?
There's only St. Lawrence Gas, I think, only has about 15,000 or 16,000 customers. It's not a big distribution utility like Enbridge with 2 million or million and 1.5 million. And it is regulated under the National Energy Board. Those
Right.
rules are regulated. So they made money. Hands down, I agree. Is it billions of dollars? I would suggest.
No, it just leads into where I'm looking at on our self-government side, is that we were consulted in 1962. Like, I don't know who permitted that line to go across. Hate to say it, but it was appropriated. It was put in. So somebody benefited from it. We didn't. So I know that Enbridge has come up with some compensation package for us. which is fine. But on the other side, and I have natural gas in my home, you know, and as a matter of fact, the oil price, I'm giving you a plug here, because with fuel oil, it is expensive.
I'm on fuel. I don't
It's
have-
expensive.
I'm in the country, I don't have access to that.
It's very expensive, and my fuel reduced by almost 60% per annual. So that's good. It's safe. But it's just that the idea that somebody had put the line through since 1962, benefited from it, and we didn't. And the other side of it, which I want to lead to on this part, which I think is a good thing if you want to, but how many people of our people are going to be trained to maintain it? Because training is really important for that. And I don't know, maybe from Six Nations, they have people that are going to line up. Talking to our environmentalists, our conservation department, Henry Lickers, a lot of the problems right now with pipelines going through is that there's a duty to consult us for First Nations people. But the big part of it is that we're not opposed to that type of expansion outright. The safety aspect is good, but we also would like to have the training aspect of maintaining those things. And that's a true partnership. So I just throw that out to
And
you.
to be quite honest, I don't work for Enbridge anymore. You know, we find ways. I did certainly see commitment on the part of Enbridge and other utilities to work with communities when we brought. Actually, my role at Enbridge for about 6 years was expansion projects to rural communities. One of the biggest projects we did was the Alfred Plantagenet Wendover project. And at that time, Enbridge worked very closely with the community and with first responders and make sure people were aware of procedures for digging safely, calling them for locates, all that kind of training. So I don't think anything has changed since I left. So I would assume they are definitely committed to going through with that as well.
Because if the fund, it can open doors, and if the pipeline is going over to St. Lawrence County, Power Corporation, whatever it is, okay, how many of our people have been hired to work with them? You know, and it's the big question that any type of an expansion, any type of that thing you're looking for as far as a new relationship, there also has to be that type of relationship where our people are involved, are participating. That's a key.
That's my philosophy.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, Peter. When Enbridge came here and they proposed this expansion and tried to get us to buy into the extensions and whatnot, those were the questions that we proposed. And there's a willingness there to help train and provide actual training dollars to our people, educated, licensed, and people. So maintenance people of this gas line is going through. So where are we moving forward on that? That's included in our negotiation. Training dollars, licensed technicians, but they're working for Enbridge right now because we don't really have the capacity to take ownership of the gas line right now, but we like to keep that, our people work for Enbridge when it comes here, if it comes here, and we're keeping our ability with Enbridge. We don't take that sort of away.
So the total cost of the project is over $8 million, right? Who pays for that?
Right now, Enbridge is committed $5 million, and we're looking for funding to get the rest of it.
The reason I raised the point from where the 1962, the gas line that's going through, right? And I see the cost of the $8 million, but how we correlate that to what they received and to who's going to pay for that.
That could be a bargaining tool, saying that you've been here since 1962. Why are we looking for additional funding to go in partnership?
Exactly.
Okay, we have a few other questions. Then we're gonna take the two, and then we're gonna move along. So there's one here, and then over to here.
Mine kind of follows up to what he had asked as far as the negotiation. There was a 20-year agreement,
Yeah, I think it's 20 or 25.
and then at the 5-year mark to where it ends, we get to renegotiate, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I believe so.
We're not there yet, right?
No.
It's signed in 2009.
Yeah.
So this $3 million contribution, is council, the negotiating team, or what you're looking at, are you looking for the set-asides to like in the land claims and other areas, things
No.
like that?
So the plan is that the project is $8 million. Enbridge will pay up to a certain, or is prepared to make an investment of around $5 million. Leaves about a $3 million difference. We are looking to get government subsidies grant to contribute to the rest of that. We know that, of course, we're in very early stages. We're sharing the information with the community. If we start, as we start going door to door and we get a pretty good indication people are more interested, we will start getting into the more technical aspect and the business aspect as well. But we know that, we're going into this by not making any financial investment of our own, because we know that if we were to make $3 million investment into this, it's probably $3 million that the community would rather see in community infrastructure, whether it be new roads, expansion of existing facilities, things like that. So it's not on a high priority list of our investment per se, but it is a service that we want the community to seriously consider if this is what they want, without making a financial investment at a community level. Now, there will be costs for conversion and things like that, which will be at individual level. We haven't sought out any conversion cost subsidies yet, because we're not going to start looking for those funds until the community says that we're prepared to go further with this project. Because otherwise we're investing time and energy into something that we may not go into.
Then just the second half of my question, where you pointed out about the transportation area, so that on your slide, with that transportation on the bottom, and what natural gas can,
Oh, yes.
buses and
Yes,
things
yes,
like
yes.
that, right? So the natural gas distribution center, how you showed it on that map, wherever it's located on the island, right? If this comes to fruition, and let's hypothetically say, we elect to go with a transportation system, somebody or somehow, and it runs off natural gas, that's where you would be able to go and purchase the natural gas as a business owner?
Sure.
Is it going to be designed that way?
Basically, natural gas, okay, I won't walk around, I'm sorry, I just want to see Cheryl. Natural gas to use in a vehicle. First of all, the vehicle has to be either designed...
Buses, I'm talking.
Buses. The buses require, the buses have to be designed to run on natural gas, number one. The natural gas typically, it's called CNG, compressed natural gas. Actually, you would have remembered years ago, my white Denbridge truck that I would come to meetings in actually ran on natural gas. It had a cylinder in the back, and the natural gas would have been injected at high pressure into this cylindrical tank, about several thousand PSI. And the engine, years ago, manufacturers used to build vehicles like light-duty pickups to run on natural gas right out of the showroom. They stopped doing that for a while, and then you ended up at a conversion market. So those vehicles were all converted to run on natural gas. Buses, on the other hand, would be built from the ground up to run on natural gas. The one thing you need to then make it run on natural gas is what's called refueling infrastructure. And it's called a VRA, a vehicle refueling appliance. Because basically, as we talked about, the natural gas in these plastic pipes is only going to be about 60 PSI, and the natural gas as it comes into the home or business is only at 1/4 of a PSI. The natural gas in those tanks is about 3,000 PSI. So you need a compressor to compress it, to jam all that gas into the tank so that you can actually drive 200 kilometers or 300 kilometers. So that's 100% an option. You could set up vehicle refueling for natural gas. And natural gas as a vehicle fuel can save huge amounts of money.
Is that what Cornwall runs off on, the buses?
There are some buses in Cornwall running on natural gas, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, one more question over here, and then we're moving along.
Throughout these natural gas presentations, community members have presented you with various questions.
Yes.
And with all due respect, you can't answer them because Enbridge should answer those questions. Yes. So my question is to council, when does the community get to ask Enbridge questions directly? When will they come here to do an Enbridge presentation?
Yeah, so just in response to your question, we have a document that is being distributed today, it's FAQs, which has generated some of the questions that we have heard from the community. There are absolutely some questions that would be answered by Enbridge as the company or the partner, most likely into the new year. Because when we started doing this, one of the things that we heard from community is we wanted to have these conversations with the community and receive presentation without Enbridge in the room. Because at the end of the day, they are to a certain degree the beneficiary of the product, of the sales, right? So it could be argued that they're biased. So that's why we hired Pete, who understands the natural gas but doesn't work for them, to assist us in having these conversations. So in the new year, as we start looking at going door to door, we will have those information sessions with them specifically to talk about, perhaps the company, or perhaps, maybe the transmission line that was referenced earlier, or more in-depth things about safety aspects that they would only know because they operate it per se. So within the new year, we're not pushing this, really fast at this point, because, we were trying to be a bit more, not aggressive, but more timeline conscious, but we were hearing lots of, we want to talk about it more, we want to hear more. So that's why we've pushed it back a bit, and we've stretched out these conversations we're having now. So I'll tell you, the only benefit that we will receive is the benefit that you will receive at your home in the door, and potentially savings as the Mohawk Council has to pay less for heating costs if we convert. Now, one of the things we have said to Enbridge is that on the onset, we're not interested in investing, if no money at all, let alone an $8 million project. But in 10 years, if this goes ahead in 10 years, say we want to buy the infrastructure and make it our company now, we want to be able to do that. And they have said, and they have been agreeable to that from day one. The problem is when we talk about jobs and we talk about servicing, there's only 600 homes on Cornwall Island. To have a technician to connect, to have a technician to inspect, to have a technician to bill, it doesn't make a whole lot of business sense because there's not enough volume. So you need to. So that's why you would, arguably for the first little while, have Enbridge support all of that until we can either make the system viable on its own, or we can continue to bring people up to train and get them to do this sort of work. Those are long-term thinkings. There's no, we want to get the gauge from the community before we start having those more technical discussions about the business model, how do we employ our people, when can we make it our company, things like that. Because if people are saying no way, no, it doesn't matter, then there's no sense in talking about these sort of things, right? So,
Ava, can I ask a quick one?
yeah.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think you were a Grand Chief at the time when that negotiation went down with the Natural Gas Transmission Limited. Remember the agreement you had with the council? I think, if I remember right, it was $75,000 allotted on the side for, I think it was a survey, wasn't it?
The work we're doing now is part of that $75,000, but it will cost much more than the $75,000.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because that was a while back. I was just wondering.
No, this
if
work.
there was ever an update on what the viewpoint was.
This like the consultation, the information meetings we're having, the door-to-door stuff, that will be part of that.
Oh, okay.
There was a survey done by Enbridge themselves that included some residents of Cornwall Island, but it wasn't a big number from my understanding.
But I remember 75,000 allotted, and part of it was to investigate Six Nations, see what they had.
Yep. Okay, really quickly, and then.
How many natives does Enbridge employ? Maybe they can bring that employee over here to service the territory.
Yeah, no, that's something we'll have to chat with them about and find out. We don't know offhand. So that's when we have the conversation with Enbridge. It'd be good to know what their, what sort of workforce they have that are indigenous. So, okay, thank you very much, Pete, for assisting with this morning's presentation. We are going to move along with our agenda. So I will now ask Mr. Peter Garrell, who enjoys the benefits of having natural gas in his home and saves lots of money, as he has already attested to,
Wants us to live under his rules.
to come forward and provide us with an update on the Untitled program.
I'm repeat. That's Pete. Thank you all. I'm really glad I came to this meeting. Because what the discussion, even we've had with the natural gas, is really something that is evidence that we are doing our own self-government. It's evidence that we are looking at not only governments but also corporations on how we can partner with them. That's governance in action. That's an evolution. And it's a change because in 1962, when they put that natural gas pipeline across Cornwall Island, there was no consultation, there was no partnership, there was nothing. The Indian agent with the governments just did it. So that's a big change. And this is where we're getting into, it's a developing of new relationships. As an update, I'm really glad that being here to provide an update, because we give you a chart on how change has come about. Every year, the Minister of Finance for Canada will present his annual budget. He has to have it signed off before he approaches Parliament. He has to have it signed off by the Governor General of Canada, who represents the Queen. What's her name? Elizabeth Dignity? Is that who probably never give it to Prince Charlie. But anyway. But the Governor General, who represents the Crown in Canada, the Minister of Finance gets the dollars. He and then reports to Parliament on the distribution of the funds they receive to go to all the other federal departments and Crown corporations each year. And it's really to fulfill the priorities of the government at the time. In this case, it's the rock star Trudeau and his Liberal Party. They do that. Each department, of course, lobbies to get as much money to fulfill their own obligations, providing services, programs, delivery, international agreements with other countries. That's what they do. They take those dollars and they fulfill those positions. It's a large, large institution. That money comes down. Now, Akwesasne, where do they fit in that food chain? Today, they receive their dollars. As it goes from Parliament, Parliament agrees to it. They give it to the Department of Finance, who distributes it all to all the other departments. It goes to the Department of Indigenous Services now, formerly Indian Affairs and Northern Development. Some of it goes over to Crown Indigenous Relationships. That money is then distributed to each Ontario, BC, Quebec regional office. The funds go from the Department of Indigenous Services to all of those other departments, all to the regional offices, right across Canada, also to the territorial governments. The territorial governments and the regional offices then distribute it through the band support funding formulas. Band support. Do I put a quarter in the jar when I say band? Remember that? Just saying we just banned the thing. But anyway, band council, right? But you're supposed to put a quarter every time you say that. However, self-government has evolved, but the dollars is a colonial system. Colonial system that has been set up, and I come back to Elizabeth, the Crown. They set these type of systems up throughout their Commonwealth, whether it's the Union of South Africa, whether it was India, whether it was Canada, New Zealand, wherever. They had problems, they put a system in to benefit themselves. So now, as subjects, it goes to the regional offices. In Ontario, there's 130 First Nations. That money is then subdivided amongst all the 130, which we're one of them, through formulas. Are we underfunded? Are we unfunded? Yes, we are. We know that. The regional office, we also can do projects. We can do proposals. But with that, we have to have, what's that, about 87 audits? About 87 audits per year that we have to provide to Canada and to those organizations on how we spend those dollars. The big change will be out is that in the future, we're dealing directly with Parliament. Once our agreements are signed and we have a physical relations agreement in, they will then provide us the funding each year over a 5-year period. And it's increased. Right now we have an economic analysis study going on by Dan Brandt Associates. We're going to have a good baseline of what money we feel we should have to run our programs, to deliver those programs and services. But we're outside of the 130 First Nations in Ontario. We're outside of the 634 First Nations across Canada. We're outside of dealing with all of those other departments. We're dealing with Parliament, once it's agreed to. We're still eligible for other programs and projects as they come about. That's fine. But our governance funding to operate will be coming from them. Question is, why are other First Nations, Seashell, James Bay, West Bank, Sioux Valley, they're into self-government agreements now, some of them because of land claims. The Yukon First Nations, small communities up in the Yukon, have self-government. The Anishinaabe Education Authority, a sectoral agreement in Ontario, have a self-government agreement. When you look at the territorial government, the Yukon and the Northwest Territories, one thing that they were having funding, when the finance department comes down, they distribute it to the territorial governments. The territorial governments then distribute it to their own First Nations in the Yukon. That's, again, by formulas. The Yukon First Nations and BC and all these other self-government First Nations says, no, we don't want to be part of that anymore. We want to work out the best deal for ourselves to continue into the future. So we want to deal directly with Parliament. And that's what you do. Yukon, Northwest Territories dropped off Indian Affairs, dropped off the territorial governments. They deal with Parliament. That's the whole evolution of where we're trying to get this new relationship with Canada. And it's an administrative and financial relationship. There's no question about it. But it's new. And as we move forward and practice, like we did even today with natural gas, is that that's evidence of an evolutionary process. We're not dealing with an Indian agent who we have to ask for permit to go out to anywhere. No, we're dealing with Parliament now, with Canada. The old policy of 2015 that they put forward for self-government on physical chapter, that formula, which was rejected, mind you, Harper put it forward, we would have almost a 40% increase in just looking at their formulas. Now they have a new formula. And we're working with Dan Brandt to say what is our economic analysis, what's our economic need. But once we have that, then we can negotiate with the new policy, which is even to give us, hopefully, more dollars than just the 40% more. Some say it's almost twice of what we should get right now. Programs, health, social, they'll continue under certain formulas, but on the governance side, establishing our own commission, establishing our own institutions of governance, that changes. We do it. So that's in a nutshell of where we're at right now. We did meet with the Legislative Commission with our EAC meeting last Thursday, I think. I was sick, I don't know. But they met with them. We met with the police, we met with the court, and Cheryl, great meeting with the court and with the police. Those are the things that we're trying to get people to understand how it's going to work. We develop our own laws. We develop it, not somebody else, because it's for our territory. And another big thing that we're also looking at, of course, is the additions to reserves. This is a biggie. When you talk about additions to reserves, how is that going to be coming into it? We're bringing it to our negotiation table. Because 15 and 59 is going to change. Has to change. Let's put it on the table. Let's start talking about it. Let's have those discussions and how that changes for us, how it benefits us. It's not going to benefit other Canadians. Because when I come back, when I look at these things and I go, wow, how did this colonial system start? Dave, doctrine of discovery. It started with that we were non-existent. Let's change that. As I mentioned one time, even on the additions to reserve, was there a removal from reserve? When they took our land, they took our piece of our territory, our islands. Additions to reserve has been taking us 15, 20 years. It can, even longer. But the removal from reserve probably took a stroke of a pen. We've got to change that thinking. That's it.
Thank you very much.
We ask questions?
Sure. Make it easy, okay? Because it's Saturday and it's supposed to start at 6 o'clock.
Yeah. One thing I've been wondering about for a long time is that I understand how the government, how they're working, how it goes down the ladder.
Right.
Every dollar they put aside for Indians, they think we get about 15 cents. The rest goes to 10 Wellington Street and all the bureaucracy. They take the majority of all the money. You know that, Pete.
That's right.
They get very little on reserve.
It comes out to about maybe 30% that actually hits the communities. Maybe less.
Yeah. But anyway, I understand you want to move away from the Indian map.
Not totally.
Not totally, but if you're going to have self-government and you're going to have self-sufficiency, you know, right now we're operating at probably 110 million a year. So I know that the obligation of the government is they have to fund education, they have to fund housing, and they have to fund health.
And social.
And other programs, a lot of the other programs, they could eliminate if they wanted to. So if you're going to be self-sufficient, how do you expect? Because to me, self-government is setting up a format of a small municipality.
Yep.
That's exactly. See,
I'm not saying we're become a municipality.
No,
I'm saying what government's idea is setting up, because when they set up in Queen's University, the whole idea of an institute of local government in 1960s, that was the idea, to turn reserves into municipalities. It didn't work.
Well,
It doesn't work.
Well, anyway, I'm just wondering, like, how can you be self-sufficient? Like, how are you going to be governing? You have to eliminate, and you can't rely on the funding from the government. You have to rely on your own self-sufficiency.
Nope, you don't. They owe us back rent. They owe us big time for unfunded, underfunded programs because we were part of a mix. We negotiate the best deal we can for us, and they're obligated through their fiduciary responsibility to continue funding us. More so. Under conservation, under justice, under environment, those are biggies. Under infrastructure, housing, that's why the economic study analysis is going to be really key on what the real cost of governance is for Akwesasne. We take that and we negotiate with Canada. This is a new mandate for us.
Well, if that's what they're going to mandate and put it on us, why is it that they're not funding to fix all the problems we have now?
Because we're 130 of Ontario. That formula came out, was it 86, 87? And it's still there for all of the First Nations, 634 across Canada, except for the self-government First Nations. Their money comes off like a transfer payment, right off the top.
Well, what I'm saying is that, you know, they've been 15 years, as far as I know, you've been pushing the self-government and meeting after meeting and promoting it. But yet, we have so many problems that are amongst our governance. We have problems with the land sectorial agreement that you want to put together. We have different areas that is not showing governance. But yet, all of this, that's my point, is that all of this should be fixed. Governance should be shown now by leadership or the people of the council before you move into a category and say, oh, now we're self-governed. You can't leave all these problems. And those people up there are responsible to fix all this.
It becomes a relationship that we fix it on our own. The agreements, once they're signed, the implementation of that, we have to identify what those issues are. We have to identify what the deficiencies are. We have to identify where there is probably certification, whatever is required, and we move forward with Canada saying, look at, Canada's saying they did a terrible job, and they're still doing a terrible job. So we want to hold their feet to the fire. We'll identify what they are and what it costs. Big time, what it costs, because they haven't done a good job. Paula?
Can you put in your legislation, your self-government, in words, in your negotiating terms, that on-reserve property taxation will never be implemented on this reserve as far as self-government?
That's right.
No, don't just rely on the Indian Act.
Nope.
But put in writing in our negotiations that we'll never have on-reserve property taxation.
At our last negotiation, that was a big topic. And Canada is hesitant to say, look at Section 87, taxation, right? Where is that? We're putting it into our agreement, but we don't want to put it into the agreement to reference an outdated, antiquated document called the Indian Act. We say, okay, let's put the wording, how we want to protect ourselves from taxation, put the wording in that if they eliminate the Indian Act today, which they could,
Yeah,
that wording remains in there as protection.
that's right.
That's what it has to do.
Yeah.
And that's really a big key. And Canada's going, wow. Because other First Nations want taxation.
Yeah, I know.
West Bank wants it. They have big leaseholds and they tax not their own people. What they tax is the people that reside on there who are non-native,
But
who are
they're
leasing.
fine now, they lost their land.
Yes,
They won't.
once you go into corporate, you're not gonna get that
They're not
back.
gonna get that.
Their land is still intact. As a matter of fact, because of additions to reserve, which they had agreed to, for a little portion, I think it was about 2 acres, was it, Philip? With West Bank, was about 2 acres for that little causeway. They received about 130 extra acres or whatever. So they got more land.
Okay, there's another question in
They
the
already
back.
own
Yeah.
it.
Hey,
They already own that.
they're working on it, but it has to be part of the reserve. Additions to reserve again. Paula?
Yeah, I have a question. You had mentioned earlier that there's quite a large number of audits that are done now. So when you go into the new framework, if that's something that's going to be supported, what then becomes the auditing function? Is it to Parliament or
To Canada.
one audit for the ones that you have received? Now, how do we as members of your community
Yeah. You'll still have annual programs and projects that we probably require an audit, okay? Different programs. But the bigger one, it's to Parliament. It eliminates almost all of the 87 audits that were required right now. Because we're dealing not with just one department. We're dealing with all departments who come under the umbrella of Parliament. And it's reviewed every 5 years.
So it's just like a province. The province
It's a
gets all their
transfer
money
payment.
right from province, from the Parliament. The Parliament is the big pot.
That's right.
It's the big pot of money, and that's where everybody draws it from.
That's right, exactly.
And so that's where we're gonna be, is equal to a province to get the money from.
Probably more so because we will have more powers because of, I would say, because of the Union of Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, because Parliament does, because provinces don't come under that, but we do. So when we define what those additional rights are, that sets us apart from any province, more so than any municipality. They don't have it, we do. When I talked about the doctrine of discovery, that is really a key point, that we need our own people to understand what they did to us, why they did it for us, for their own land, for the resources they took from us, how we have to change that. And that's where we sit down and negotiate with them, because it was a wrong, and they have to right it.
Okay.
Okay, with that being said, do they, like I say, they're using the wolf belt. Does the nation use it in agreement with this? How did you get to use the wolf belt on something that is going to be tied into Parliament? Isn't that an
That's
infringement of our rights?
It's symbolic, that's Akwesasne.
Yeah, but is there a permission that was granted to use that?
Do you need to use any symbols to be used? I don't know, I don't think so, because we use the 2-row wampum belt, we use the one dish, one spoon, those are symbols.
Yes.
Do we need permission to use symbols? I don't know. Good
But to
question.
use it tied in with the Parliament, isn't that,
That's separate,
representing?
that's separate from Parliament.
Yeah,
That's a total separate entity.
Okay, we're going to wrap up now. Thank you very much for the questions on that. Thank you, Peter, for the update. We will see you at the next general meeting. Were you okay with your questions? No. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to the next presentation. The next presentation will be. Yes. No, the meeting's not over, but the presentation on what he's talking about is over. So we're continuing to proceed. The next presentation we have is the Akwesasne Dundee land claim. I'll ask members of the Aboriginal Rights and Research Office to come forward and provide you with a presentation and update.
Sego Suguego, Lohidil Yunga, Spilway Creek, a researcher from the Aboriginal Rights and Research Office, and
I'm Fran Lazar. I'm also a researcher at the Aboriginal Rights and Research Office.
we're here to just provide a quick update with the Akwesasne Dundee's specific claim, as well as the referendum that is currently underway. There are packets being handed out that provide all the information therein. So, in the packet, you'll find a breakdown.
So this is just this in the packet. This paper is just a quick history of the claim, and then the settlement agreement, the dates, as well as other important. There's maps and stuff in there as well.
Yeah, so the entirety of the settlement agreement is right here. It's been photocopied. It's photocopy of the one that has been initialed by the negotiation team. So Canada's negotiator, lead negotiator, as well as Abram Benedict, community lead negotiator. And that is available for all community members to read over. Within the agreement, it explains that Canada's offer is $239 million of compensation for previous things that have we brought forward through the claim, as well as Canada is offering the ability for us to regain up to 18,282 acres of land back to the community. So that is explained. The black and white terms and condition detail is this one. So just like your software materials, you read that very long end users agreement. This is it.
You may have gotten like a different one in the mail with simple language to explain into easier to understand terms of what the settlement agreement is. None of the legal jargon will be in that one.
So ultimately, the referendum has been called by council. The question is, as a voter of the Mohawks of Akwesasne, do you approve the terms and conditions of the Akwesasne claim settlement agreement initialed by the negotiators for the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne in Canada, which settles and releases the Akwesasne Dundee claim, and B, authorizes and direct Mohawk Council of Akwesasne to execute all documents to do everything necessary to give effect to the Akwesasne Dundee claim settlement agreement. So that is up to the community to decide. The online voting has commenced. On the pamphlet, you can see that voting started on October 1st, goes on to December 7th. Go online to akwesasne.simplyvoting.com to be able to individually put in your vote. There's only one vote per community member. There is also on Saturday, December 8th, is polling stations will be made available, each one of the district recreation centers, as well as one in St. Regis Mohawk School in Hogan. So the idea is to get as many community members informed through all the documentation, be able to read the agreement itself. We also have frequently asked question pamphlets that are within the package itself to help communicate to community members what the overall impact would mean, and that they can become informed community member and then be able to cast their vote on whether to accept or decline this current option from Canada. So that is, if there's any information about the referendum that you need, you can contact Chief Referendum Officer Leona Benedict. Any political questions regarding the Akwesasne settlement claim can be directed to council. And Aero staff, we're here to just help community members get educated and informed on the history of the claim itself. So with that, yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Looking at this, and we had some questions as far as negotiations. We had questions on the legalities behind this claim. And in the back of this claim we handed out, this guy swears, I, Robert Pratt, he must be the legal advisor.
Yes.
Robert Pratt, he says that he, for the purpose of explaining to the Mohawks the settlement agreement, all the questions, and he said that he agreed locations of meetings, time, he was supposed to come and explain to us all the legalities.
He did.
I've never seen him. I've been to all your meetings.
In the month of September, there were 4 informational sessions that were created. There was one here.
They were history lessons.
Robert Pratt was available for that meeting that was held here in September, as well as Jasnaine, Ganadago, and in Hogan. Robert Pratt was present for all 4 of those meetings. Dates and times were announced back in September. I believe they're listed in this document, I believe.
But there, just to be clear though, there have been a lot of other sessions that have occurred that he would not have been at. So there were ones that he was at that are listed in there, but there have been tons of other ones that he was not at. But at any
Abram, we
time,
never, even the financial advisor, we've been to a lot of
He was
meetings.
present there.
those same meetings he was there. If the council wants to speak to or members of the community want to speak to the financial advisor or the legal about specific issues, I mean, there's no problem, we can make that happen, right? But there were requirements to have them at specified meetings, and they were.
And when's the final vote, next month?
December 8th,
December 8th.
That's the polling station day is December 8th.
yeah.
Yeah, for September 20th was when the Goanoge Recreation information session had occurred here at 6 p.m.
When was that?
September 20th.
There's been many meetings as soon as I don't remember, I don't try either, but as an action item, could we have a community meeting with him and this financial person? Just asking for action.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah.
Yes, here. And over here. Yeah, go ahead.
This week, they came to my house here, employees, they come and educate you for your vote. So I asked them a hypothetical question. I said, let's say all 18,000 people that live on that agreed to sell it right off the bat. I said, would you take that 239 million and buy the whole thing? And they said, no, we'll just use the interest to buy that land. Is that council's position, or was he misinformed that worker?
The final, the use of the proceeds has not all entirely been finalized, because the problem is that if they were all to say, like you said, to sell it or to buy it all back, right, there's still no process for us to distribute it back to our members either, right? So that has to be worked out as well. But there's a significant amount of money that will be available and invested into buying land.
I thought the whole deal was to buy land, not just.
No, it is. It is.
Not just a certain amount.
Yeah, no. I mean, it would, I mean, if that opportunity were available, I mean, we would immediately speak to council. But the likelihood of every member in the Dundee in 18,200 acres of land saying we will sell
That's the
today.
reason I said hypothetically.
Yeah.
What if it was possible?
Yeah, no, it could be possible, yes, yes.
So
I
you
mean,
would take that 239 million, buy the whole 18,200, whatever it was, 36 acres?
yeah.
You would do that?
Well, that's the plan. But I mean, if they're all going to sell really quickly, probably not for the next several years, right?
No, the same.
But the hypothetics of that happening are very minimal.
Yeah.
I mean, unless the world was coming to an end and everybody was selling, the likelihood is very minimal. But that is the plan, is to buy, it's possible, the plan is to buy land back from there. Yeah. No, that is the plan. Was it in the back? There was another, oh, sorry, over here.
They were sitting about 20,000 in total acres that we returned back to us. The document we had only, the opportunity to buy only back 18,000 of that 20,000. Where's the rest of that land go? Now we can't purchase all of it. Where's the rest of it? Well, 18,000, we can fully to from 20,000. Where's all that, the land go? We can't purchase all 20,000, not just 18,000. Why is that?
The claim is approximately 20,000 acres of land, which was the entire Dundee portion from 1888. But the community at the time had accepted $50,000 for that alleged surrender, and they used that to buy back portions of what is now the district of Jasnaine. So that was used from 1888 to 1953, and that was calculated part of it, as well as there's other portions within the Dundee land specifically that are protected.
18,000 we're getting or 20,000 we're getting? What's the total number?
18,000.
18,000? Why is it 20,000 here?
That's just a history part of the.
Yeah. Historically, the entire
I
area.
understand why we're only allowed to buy like back part of the land, we should buy it all, but not
Yeah, during the negotiations, we tried to hold Canada responsible for everything, and it was a very lengthy process of having to verify every single lot and the history and receipts of every single one of those lots.
Yes.
But the opportunity to buy back land in the province of Ontario as part of this agreement, Will that have to go to the, larger responsible for addition to reserves, so we have to grab it in Ontario?
Yes.
We'll have to
Yes.
go through that long process?
Yeah, which the government, well, we have language in the agreement that says we'll have an accelerated process, but currently right now, the government is looking at ways to accelerate that process for everybody. But yes, so we have a preference, we have an accelerated process, and they're trying to streamline it as it exists now, but we will have to go through the ATR process.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, if you don't mind. One of the questions here on 5.0 requests that there should be a Mohawk Council resolution. In order for 5.0, which is addition to reserves or new reserves, the Mohawks of Akwesasne must, in the form of the Mohawk Council resolution, request that acquired land be set apart as a reserve and specify that a request is being made pursuant to the settlement agreement. So was there a council resolution already passed?
No.
Or when the agreement comes in play, that are you deciding to add to 15, or are you talking about making new reserves?
So when we're in the position of the agreement being accepted and we have purchased land back, we have to then pass a resolution saying we want to create this land, or add this land to reserve. It's actually,
It says pursuant accordingly with.
yeah, well, we
In other
would
words,
reference.
They want a resolution from you before this is signed?
No, they would want a resolution that says, in accordance with our final settlement agreement, we are asking this land be added to reserve.
So have you decided?
We haven't bought any land, and the agreement's
I
not.
mean, have you been in discussions? Are you
No.
talking about
No.
new reserve? Or-
No.
It should be the people anyway.
Yeah, no, we're not.
It's going to come back to the community.
The agreement has to be signed and accepted by the community first before we can act on anything in it.
Another question I have is, this Dundee litigation was opened up in, I believe, 1981. 1976 was the Seaway claim. Was the Dundee ever at one time part of the Seaway claim? The Seaway litigation?
Not entirely. There's
Not
an
entirely.
overlap regarding the Dundee lands that were flooded due to the seaway itself. So there's a small portion of understanding. We filed it in both claims, and so that's why in this settlement agreement, that if we settle the Dundee, that small portion of lands that we held on the seaway that were Dundee lands that were flooded will be removed from the seaway
So
litigation.
that's coming out of the Seaway claim?
Yeah, so we brought up the question twice, and this is their answer to that, if we were to accept it.
So it's only that small portion?
Yes, just the Dundee lands that were affected by the seaway, not any other lands, just the Dundee. Are there any questions for the presenters? All right, well, thank you very much for providing that information and update to us.
I have a question for also with regard to after, say, for example, if this is all an agreement, we're going to proceed. I know there's still a lot of work to be done for the community from council with regard to how we're going to proceed with things. One of them was how are the funds that are going to be received going to be used? What mechanisms are going to be brought into place? The other question is, Ms. White here, alluding to how do you decide that you're going to go with 15, 59, whatever reserve number? I think there's options to add a new reserve. There's a couple that you can make a number or whatever.
I believe so, yeah, but I mean,
Like, how we're claiming Canada doesn't consult First Nations. I don't want to in 15 years say Mohawk Council hasn't consulted the people.
yeah.
What mechanisms are being looked at to ensure that the people are going to be consulted? You can't just do a resolution and say we're buying this land.
Yeah, no, those processes are, that need to be developed. Like, there's the financial aspect that we have, there are provisions in there for short-term investments of the money when it immediately comes in and transferred into what the long-term will be. But there's a lot of processes that have to be developed, i.e. exactly what you're talking about. When does council consult with the community? Where are these lands? What are the thresholds on these sort of things? And then when we get the lands, what is done with them, right? I mean, because, is it all going to be housing or going to be allocated out to people? And if it's going to be allocated out to members, what is the criteria, right? Is it a lottery system? Is it a rating system? All of these things need to be developed in process and policy so that we can show to the community this is how it's going to work, and that we can be transparent and accountable for how that's going to work as well.
Abram, could you explain this referendum?
Can I explain the
Yeah,
referendum?
the referendum, it says 25%. Some people are kind of confused with that. So are you saying that, this is the way I'm looking at it. If 100 people, eligible voters, go and vote for this settlement agreement, and out of the 100, you're looking at 25% referendum, 25% of the voters that vote, and then out of the 25%, you have to have at least 50%. So if it was 100 voters,
No.
it looks like 26 would be a yes.
So what, I don't have it specifically in front of me.
25% plus one?
I don't have it specifically in front of me, but what it basically says is that 25% of the eligible voters,
Right.
which
That
is, yeah, that are able to vote, must vote in this referendum. So which means it's about, what's the number?
1,956 is
Yeah.
the threshold for the 25% out of 7,818 eligible voters.
So there's 7,800 people that could vote, that are over the age of 18. 25% of them, which is the 1,100 people, have to vote. And then 51% of the people that have voted have to say yes for it to be accepted. That's what that section says.
Okay, I didn't know it was overall.
No.
I thought it was just the ones that voted.
No, there has to be a minimum number of people that come up. Okay, all right, so we're gonna move along. Oh, sorry. Yes,
In the event that people start buying property over there, once this is all accepted or whatever, in the time frame that they buy the property until it's turned into a reserve land and they have to pay the taxes on that property, is that time?
yes, yeah. Okay, all right, so I do want to move along. I do want to move along to the next presentation.
979 people have to vote yes in this referendum. If it fails, what is the council's, what happens after that?
Then I believe there's an opportunity to ask for a second vote if it's in there. I don't recall what it is. But basically what will happen is that we will go back to the membership and discuss what the next options are. The next options basically at that point will be to do nothing, or to go back to court and litigate and take our chances there, or we'd have to talk about internally with the community what our political options would be.
Thank you.
Okay, is that it for questions on that? I do want to move along to the next presentation. We still have one more presentation to go through and then a few other items. So I do want to welcome Rhonda Adams up here to provide a presentation. Over the last little while, you may have heard a bit about Smart Cities Akwesasne, the work that we've been doing, having a number of information sessions. So we thought it would be appropriate to provide the community at a general meeting with an update of what, with the background on this project and what it's all about.
So just a little bit of information before I start. This is the presentation I presented to the jury last week in Toronto, not just myself. I have a team of Ashley, Waheso, and Jordan. We presented in front of a jury. If for those of you, if you don't know anything about Smart Akwesasne, we submitted an application to Infrastructure Canada on a Smart Cities Challenge, and we qualified as a finalist. So we're one of 5 communities that are in the runnings to win a $5 million grant from Infrastructure Canada. So what we've been working on is, well, I'll just go through the presentation. Our challenge statement that we submitted to Infrastructure Canada has to do with diabetes, if you want to run through. So diabetes, people living with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, through the national average, is it not running that? Okay, so the national average is actually 9% within Canada of people living with diabetes. That's type 1 and type 2. And Akwesasne's average comes out to be 33% living with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So our challenge statement that we submitted for this
Infrastructure Canada Smart Cities Challenge is to decrease the rate of new cases of diabetes per year in Akwesasne to the Canadian average. These are new cases. So we have 33% in Akwesasne already living with diabetes. And what we intend on doing is lowering the new cases of diabetes per year. In Canada, that translates to 6 people per 1,000. Ours is already higher than that. So we're trying to get ourselves to just only 6 people per 1,000 in Akwesasne. We intend on doing this by improving community wellness using traditional approaches, encompassing holistic Indigenous practices, and improving access to community services and health diagnostics. When we went to Toronto last week, we covered this for a few minutes because the problems in Akwesasne are how people are moving between districts, and the fact that Cornwall Island, anywhere you go when you're going off of Cornwall Island, you have to go through a Canadian border. So we presented this to the jury because they might not understand what our trials and tribulations are living here in Akwesasne. You know, they think, well, Akwesasne, it's right next to Cornwall, they're basically right next to a city. What do they have to complain about? They have everything that they need to access there. So we really concentrated on the fact that we have 2 portions in Quebec, Snai and St. Regis, and the fact that they're landlocked by the United States. And that we have issues with Ontario and Quebec in our health sector. I'm sure everybody's experienced that. People who have QHIP can't use services here close by in Cornwall. They have to travel far to Montreal in some cases. And that we have a portion of our community in the United States also. So we really wanted to iterate this to our jury, that living here is really complicated for us. What we've done so far for the project is we've been using some design thinking methods. So we've been holding some evening sessions for community members. We held one here on Cornwall Island. We've been holding some day sessions with employees of Mohawk Council. The health workers, we're trying to get the health workers in. We bring in some people just from Mohawk Council to be there as community members, let us know what their frustrations are working with the health department, and trying to look at ways that we can make things easier for them. So a design thinking approach is used in Silicon Valley. I think I'm a really big part of this project because I'm in IT. I've worked within the computer department of Mohawk Council for 15 years, and I really went to school to work for my community. So this is a really cool project for me. We'll just move on to the next. So we've held some design thinking workshops with the health professionals, and what we built from these workshops are some preliminary sketches on what we would like to see in Akwesasne. So this is one of the ideas you see presented here, which would be like a healthy meal truck and some kind of a delivery service. So there's just some ideas behind using an app to order meals, using your smartphone to gain access to more healthier foods. This is some examples. We've been doing a lot of our work at the traveling college just because we've hired a digital firm. When they come in, we try to educate them on our community and culture, and we're trying to make sure that they're keeping our culture and our holistic approaches into our solution that we're trying to build here. So we've also been doing a lot of social media. I don't know who in here uses Facebook, but we've had a bunch of postings on Facebook. Actually, when we first set out to start this project, it was a question posed in Facebook, and we were asking, what would you like to see implemented in Akwesasne for a smart cities approach? So here's some of this Smart Akwesasne, where we offered out 2 NHL tickets, had a lot of response. And what was really cool about that one was that there's some portions of this project that we've been working on already, and some suggestions were coming in were some things that we're already working on. So a really big part of this proposal is to make sure that we're building this with the community, for the community. So historically in IT, right, we know what's best for you because we know IT, right? We know the digital stuff. And what happens is that we build things and we say, here, use it. And a lot of times it gets pushed back, and well, I don't like that and it's too hard to use. So what we're trying to do in this project is build it for you, and we're building it with you. So in the community sessions that we hold in the evenings, we're really relying on the community to come and let us know their ideas of what they want to see in this project. So this is our Cornwall Island we held October. It was
September.
Was it in September?
Or I'm sorry, it was
in October. So we invited community members for a dinner. We offered dinner. We offered some prizes for showing up, and these are things that were posted on the wall. These are like preliminary app sketches. And we asked the community to go up and tell us what portions of these apps do they think would be cool for us to use here in Akwesasne. I don't know if that'll run.
It's a PDF, so.
So we just had a little video here, and it showed all the people that came in and what they were doing, placing their little dots on the wall as they voted, and just let us know what parts that they liked. This isn't going to run either. Okay, so there was a little video here. We have a really introductory, great app that we have had built so far, and in there are different areas of healthy eating access, connections hopefully to your health workers that will make things easier, so you don't have to, when you want to talk with your diabetes nurse or even just your dietitian, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to prevent any future diagnosis of diabetes, is that when you make an appointment, we're hoping in the future that you don't necessarily have to get in your car, go sit at the border, and take that 25 to 45 minute drive. We're hoping to make connections to you directly with the nurses through your cell phone or through your internet. So as we build this, we will be determining our technical requirements for the digital solutions, and we'll be working with privacy commissioners in Ontario and Quebec, as well as jurisdictional health regions that residents of Akwesasne use. We have three main areas of this project. The first one being the app and/or web portal. The second area is greenhouses. We intend on implementing greenhouses in Akwesasne. We need the community's opinion on how do we implement this. Do we want one large supersized greenhouse where we'll be employing people and we'll be growing enough vegetables and fruit possibly to supply to our own community and neighboring communities? Do we want smaller multiple greenhouses throughout the community implemented sort of like a co-op? So do we want greenhouses implemented kind of like at our recreational facilities where your communities will show up and
Does the grant allow for the funding for those opportunities?
The grant is for $5 million, and it's what we want to do with it.
So you could spend it.
So we can do it on what we want. The one major stipulation of this, when we go to the final jury presentation, is that we need to prove that the community told us what they want. And it's not just us sitting at the table, 3 or 4 of us making a decision on what would be best for our community. It has to be proven that this is our community's requests. So these are the options that we're looking at, and these aren't limited. If anybody else has any other ideas of what they would like to see, we can take a look at that too. So there's also the option of small multiple greenhouses throughout the community. Wherever people have large open spaces, we could be potentially coming and implementing a greenhouse there, and you have your family or your neighbors take care of it. Maybe one greenhouse is going to grow carrots, one's going to grow green beans, one's going to grow this, and then we do what we want, bring it all together and have people, we're looking at having delivery services from these, hopefully. So there's also the option of one greenhouse at each school. So people who have come to our functions so far, the greenhouses in the schools will be educating our children young. So we'll be teaching them to plant. It'll be implemented as a part of their curriculum. We'll also be implementing, science to it. So we'll have Internet of Things. We'll have a bunch of electronic devices that help read things, that help, just get kids interested in technology, because it seems like it's the way of the future, right? The kids are always walking around with these cell phones in their hands nowadays. So just to make sure that we're getting our connection to the new generations. the envisioning for the greenhouse is that it will become a learning center. And what we're hoping to do as a part of the project also is, if we can take this $5 million proposal and show that we're connecting it to other grants, and possibly find other grants that will help us increase the raised beds gardening in Akwesasne, because we need people to be producing their own healthy foods. When you grow it yourself, you know what's in it. You know what you put in it. When you're buying vegetables in the grocery stores in the United States, that stuff is all sprayed with Roundup. And I don't know if everybody knows that, you know? So what we're hoping for in Akwesasne is to educate everybody. So if you're growing it yourself, it's the healthiest version that you can make, and we'll have educators on that, where we'll have mentors coming in, you know, teaching us about how to fertilize it properly and how to regenerate your soil. And also what we want to do with these greenhouses is to make sure that they're using sustainable and renewable energy. So a really big part of my thinking on this is that I don't want to implement something out of this $1 $5 million grant in Akwesasne, and we got to plug it in and then it's going to drain us in our future. Right? So I don't want to say, now we have to pay this big electricity bill so that we can have this greenhouse at this school. We want to make sure that it's being implemented using renewable energy. The other portion of this is the electric cars. So if anybody here came to the function that we held last week, on Wednesday, it was just this week. Wednesday. We brought in Plug and Drive, which is a non-for-profit. They educate people on electric cars and how it's actually cheaper to maintain in the long run. They might seem like they're pretty expensive to invest in the beginning, but they did a whole presentation. I heard from a few community members that were walking out of that saying, I want to go buy an electric car now. So what we're trying to do is, a part of this grant is implement some electric cars. We have different solutions, again, as to how we're going to implement these electric cars. So one of them is a car share program. In the big cities, they have something called Zipcar or Commune Auto, and what it is there's cars that are in these specified parking areas, and you just go through your app, you register, put your license in, and you rent that car. Because what we're finding is happening in Akwesasne is not everybody has access to healthy foods. So that's why they're using these canned goods, box goods, and because it has long shelf life, because they can only get out once in a while. So we're looking at possibly offering those cars as an option within our communities. Another part of the electric cars is to create an Uber Eats. I don't know if anybody here knows what Uber Eats is, but you can order food through your app. This is available mainly in the big cities, and there's just general public people who register as delivery people, and they bring you the food that you order. So an Uber Eats healthy Akwesasne. So this delivery service isn't going to bring you poutine. It's not going to bring you soda. It's not going to bring you chips. Everything that's going to be offered in this delivery service will be dietitian reviewed and dietitian approved. Or a van/bus size type of implementation where we can possibly once a week offer trips to the grocery stores coming out of each district. And what we're doing right now for that is we're trying to create some connections for solutions provider for solar electric vehicles. So again, if we do implement these electric cars, we don't want it to be a drain on us where we're plugging it in and now we're paying these big bills on electricity. We're trying to figure out some kind of a renewable, sustainable implementation for these. Our next steps, again, I presented this in Toronto last week. So November 14th, which was just 2 days ago, Wednesday, was our biggest event because we partnered with the diabetes prevention specialists and the diabetes management nurses. And we had a really big event at the St. Regis Recreation. We intend on being at your MCA open house sessions, which are happening on the 27th, 28th, and 29th. And we'll be doing one more community engagement session in Snai on December 5th. So we've held one on Cornwall Island, we've held one in St. Regis, we'll be holding one in Snai next. So if you have ideas on what you want implemented in this project, come to the Snai Recreation on December 5th. We're also intending on holding some weekly Facebook Live interactions as soon as we get those portions prepared. So here's a digital representation of what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do here is implement some electric cars to help people gain access to healthier foods. And what we're trying to do is help solve any issues that you have getting to your appointments, getting to your health workers. We're hoping to lower the amount that you need to use health workers because food is medicine. If we can get people better access to healthier foods, then hopefully they'll have less doctor's appointments. And this is our representation of our greenhouses. So we'll be trying to get the food from the greenhouses to the people. And we're hoping to do this all because it's an Infrastructure Canada Smart Cities. Well, their requirement is that you're using data and technology for this implementation. And the way I kind of see it is when we meet with the younger generations, they're saying, can you educate me on, some of the ceremonies that are held? Can you figure out how I can get a connection to where is a sweat being held? So what we're trying to do in this app is, look after everybody's mind, body, and soul. So it's basically an app for Akwesasne. And it will hopefully, in the end, be a connection to everything. Everything that you need. Community announcements, make housing payments through it. Pay your rent, order green food bag. In the end, that's what we envision is something that's going to be all-encompassing for everything that you have to do here in Akwesasne. Yeah, I'll go up.
Thank you. Are there any questions with respect to the presentation? Yes.
Your data security, on the data security that you have listed on there, it says that you will have to work with the privacy commissioners in Ontario and Quebec. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, based on Pete's prior presentation on nation building, as far as agreements or things like that, to what impact this has as far as having to go into that realm?
Okay, so there's it's like access to information privacy, right? PIPEDA and HIPAA. So we just need to build this to make sure that people aren't going to be able to get in, like making it non-hackable, right? Because it's data. So we'll be working with the privacy commissioners to make sure that we're only collecting data that we're supposed to be. So we're not asking you for more data that we could possibly have a breach on.
You're going to build the security features into it?
We're going to build the security features into it, and it's not just me that's doing it, right? We have a digital firm that we're working with, and they're well aware of all of the regulations on it. And
thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
With respect to the whole smart cities initiative, like greenhouses, healthy, are you collaborating with education?
yes.
See, I saw not that long ago this whole thing about home economics. And I know we've strived in the last 3 to 4 years, how do we bring back into the community and teach our younger population how to clean, all the basic skills that is needed that is no longer there. I think it ended up in my generation.
Well,
But,
hey, I try. No. Well, what we're hoping.
The schools, the high school, you don't see those things anymore. But we're going to start planting, we're going to start hunting and fishing again.
Well, I've been to a Food Security Canada conference on behalf of this project. And what's happening out in other Aboriginal communities is they're getting, hunted foods like venison and moose served in their schools. And they're working with the Canadian food, whatever it's called, to make sure that they can implement that. So what I myself envision for this greenhouse and saying that it'll be a learning center is that we'll be growing, and we'll be growing a lot, and then we'll hopefully be implementing mass canning, right? So we'll be canning our tomatoes ourselves. We're not buying it in the stores. We'll be offering that to our food pantries. We'll be offering it as a community, come together, learn how to can, take some cans home for your family. So those types of things where to teach the kids that, you know, your food doesn't just always come from Walmart. I remember when my son was little, everything came from Walmart, right? We had pumpkins, this yard full, he was playing on it. Someone showed up and said, hey, where'd you get the pumpkins? My uncle grew them in the garden. Mike's son was saying, Walmart, you know, because everything comes from Walmart. So it was, well, now we took him and put him in the garden with his uncle, you know, and now he grows, in my family, we grow 1 row each in our garden. And it's a community garden. I have a cousin, she has 2 rows with her and her children. So just to implement this type of stuff throughout the whole community, and then hoping that if so far, it looks as though a lot of people are leaning towards putting these greenhouses at the school so that we are educating our children at that level, that it will be put into their curriculum, and there will be a part of like learning to can everything. This is the process, and this is how food should be preserved.
Well, that's fine and then, but I want to bring in the parent who's going to help the child. And like I have been the last 3 years asking our programs within MCA to provide services, not run 8 to 4.
I know.
You know, so are you going to be able to succeed with that? Because it hasn't happened to me.
If that's a part of your request as a community member, input into this project, we can, well, for this project, what we can do is we can look at making sure that the mentors that we have for this greenhouse also have a role in that kind of area. So the canning part of it, the harvesting, you know, even making our own elderberry syrup, things like that. You know, all of that because the intention of this project is to be holistic. And the way I've interpreted it, and I know my first original presentation that I did in Toronto, we were really just starting out on it, is I interpret this as getting our people back to their roots through an app, through digital technology. So what we're hoping to have on that app is, you know, how to make corn soup. Here's a little video. And we'll be building it in a way that these young people are used to, the little tasty videos. It's a video that's 30 seconds long, and it's how to cook something, you know? And it's real quick. It's not the old, what's that lady there where she talks real funny and she's like, first you cut the bird, you know, and it takes like 45 minutes to get through that cooking show. Nowadays, it's the little 30-second tasty, here's your 5 ingredients, here's how you're gonna cook it. And that's, you know, we're hoping to make it accessible digitally.
Okay, there was one in the back, in the back. Okay. Okay, go ahead. Please.
Since you're gonna have the greenhouses at the schools,
Possibly.
if
Yes.
that do happen there, would it just be available to the community, or would it also go into the school itself?
Hopefully, that's, you know, right now Derry White's doing it at AMS, where he grows green leaves and he grows lettuce with them, and the kids are really, really interested in stuff like that. And it's hard because he can only take 10 kids and he teaches them how to do this, right? And he can only take 10 kids at a time. So what we're hoping is if we're implementing this as a part of their curriculum, then every child gets a chance. You know, every class will have a portion in that greenhouse. Every kid will be able to grow, and hopefully what we can do is even get them taking home seedlings, you know, and even having our greenhouse mentors go to their houses. Here's how we set up a raised bed. Here's dirt that we're getting, you know, and here's how you plant it, and just try. Everyone asks me, Rhonda, how do you know how to garden? I don't know. My dad said, put the seeds in the ground, see if it grows. I've been doing that for 15 years. You know, like if it some years it grows, some years it doesn't. So.
Okay, it's over here.
I guess it goes with Paula's question is that, are you working with already established, like the Akwesasne Freedom School already has a greenhouse, they already have it in their curriculum. There's also the Akwesasne Task Force on the Environment, they have a seed preservation and restoration program. Well, will this...
We intend on connecting with everyone and everything, because I just heard this year there's a community garden on Cornwall Island up west. There was a couple Facebook posts, you know, come help us harvest the beans, and it was like, I didn't know about this. So the thing, what's happening with Akwesasne is our communication, right? I never knew that was happening. I never knew that there was a greenhouse that was producing, I think they said Kerry Torrance has some kind of, he's producing a lot of food, and then he's not, nobody knows about it, where he's like, just come and get it and can it if you want, you know? And we didn't know about this, so we're hoping that this app will make a central area where Right now, there's 2 or 3 greenhouses on the American side. We're implementing some at our schools and just putting out information that this is what's right. This is what we've harvested this week. Don't let it go to waste. You know, it's here. Like my uncle grows zucchini out of our ears every summer. Like, please, only 2 plants, and he puts 12 in. It's like, I could be taking those zucchinis and going to the central location where it'll get dispersed. So we're looking for like a cooperative on this.
Over here.
I was just going to ask if you consulted with Kenny Perkins. He's been doing that for the last several years, and he's got a pretty good garden going.
We intend on making all of these connections, and we'll take note of that and make sure that we're reaching out.
Over here, yeah.
Do you plan on improving our data structure? Like, it's not, without having it's really, really bad. If you're going to digital, being able to watch your webinars and
With
stuff.
pushing this project through, I'm also a part of Fiber to the Home project right now. It's kind of like going in front of Ontario and Quebec, and it's in front of CTI. But with this project, we keep trying to iterate to these government representatives with Infrastructure Canada that internet is a human right. And we have speed maps in Akwesasne that are just ridiculous. We're at 1.8, 2.4, 2.3. You can't really do much with that. So they say, well, then what are we doing with this project if we don't even have internet at our homes? And we kind of say to the government, well, what are you doing to help get us access so that we can implement this fully? But right now, this project is running on just the assumption that everybody's using a smartphone. Yeah, I'm working on that with Bell Canada right now. Yeah. Yeah.
But what's your answer to that? We have grant applications in to the structure?
We do have grant applications in for Fiber to the Home. Just with the changes in the government, with Ford coming in and, you know, cutting off a bunch of things, we're waiting on answers from Quebec and Ontario right now on that project.
So they're not directly related, but we're trying to make them complement each other.
Yeah.
Right? So that way we can continue.
We're trying to use one to leverage the other on these 2 projects. This one's a $5 million project, and the Fiber to the Home project is a $13 million.
Okay, in the back here. Yeah.
Just a suggestion, because you talked about, we're always having the communication component, but also there's the whole community culture component. I think that's where in Germany, Japan, and New Zealand, firms are working more at a 4-day work week, because that extra day provides that necessary balance between family and work that allows them to actually start incorporating what things involved. So is that something council can look at, is 4-day work week? Because unlike where most people think, oh, it makes it more counterintuitive in productions, but you got to get an entire week's worth of work done in 4 days. You're a lot more efficient, and so is everyone else, as well as providing that more balance of the home. Because we know that between 8 and 4, it's not conducive for everybody, because we all automatically block that time off as only working for that.
That's a good point. No, we'll note it. So. Yes, here.
When do they make their final decision?
When do we make our final decision? On this project? Our submission has to be in by March 5th, and then they're saying that they'll have the answer by spring of 2019.
Go ahead.
This $5 million, if we did it, is it a one-time thing?
Yep.
So what happens when the $5 million runs out?
Well, what we're hoping is to make sure that we have it written and we have ideas to help keep it sustainable. You know, so that right now, if the greenhouses are producing and it's going to, say, the green food bags, right now the green food bags are purchased, right? So, and if the food's going into the schools, right now there's a hot lunch budget. So it's just to say that that's what will keep it alive and that's what will keep the mentors there, or we find grants, you know. Possibly, yeah. Any way that we can build it so that there's sustainable funds that will keep it up and running.
There's laws that have to be changed if we do that. We can't just say, here, with the money.
Well, right now they buy it from a fruit distributor and they're giving them money for that fruit and vegetable. Why can't they give it to this program? Right? It's like saying it's just keeping it alive. It's just keeping a mentor there.
Even if you took all of it,
Oh yeah, of course, but other services, we're looking at other services, we're looking at keeping it with other grants, like we're not just going after $5 million, right? We can go after some green energy grants too, to partner with the sustainable energy. And we can go after other partnerships for the electric car delivery services. So what we're trying to do is take this $5 million and actually kind of like turn it into 10 or 12 million, saying that $5 million is going to be in kind to this other grant, so that we can try and build it so that everything is sustainable.
Okay, over here.
Yeah, I was going to say that it is actually kind of a worldwide thing where work weeks are going to 4 days or going lower hours. I mean, it's not. And if everybody is going to be doing these community things and growing their own foods and being more involved with their families, they are going to need more time. And you could also get more people working too. But also on the greenhouse things, I don't know if people are aware, but a lot of people are on strawberries, and I'm mentioning strawberries in particular because of our, our culture, are so laden with chemicals and poisonous that there is a group in Ontario, and I forget the location, but they're going to start growing organic strawberries and distributing them. And I was thinking that's a good thing for us to look into, also with greenhouses, is growing our organic strawberries for our own use and possibly distribution.
Good.
We'll look into that as we work on the project.
Go ahead.
Well, I want to say that it's going to feed into a lot of areas in the greenhouse. Our school, our food program, our schools, the food bag that we distribute to each district, but also for the elders, it's more healthy.
Yes. Yes.
So that's something that we have to do.
Okay, we'll take one more and then we're going to move along. Go ahead.
Who's your competition? Like, if they're all First Nations?
No, we're not all First Nations. There's the Smart Cities Challenge is there's one $5 million prize, there's two $10 million prizes, and there's one $50 million prize. So there's 5 in the category of 5 million. So we're competing against 4 other communities. One other one is First Nations, and I believe 3 are like municipalities or city town things. And then in the 10 million, there's cities, and the 50 million is like, I think Montreal's in it. So we're only competing against 4 others. And when we went to the jury last week, we seemed to have a lot of interest. There were a lot of questions coming on. They gave us 10 minutes to do a presentation, ran through this really quick. We had 3 seconds to spare. And then the jury is made up of like all these different people. They're not even necessarily government workers. They're just people that they brought in that have different experiences in life, and they work towards different things. And we had questions, full 20 minutes of questions. So I feel like there's a lot of interest in this, and the one thing is, if we do build something that works well and we can actually lower our new diagnoses rates of diabetes, we can share it with others, right? It can implement in other Aboriginal communities. It can just be implemented in other towns. So I feel like they're really watching this project closely. And we're hoping with the $5 million that we're going to carry out a 3 to 5 year project with it.
So would you say that with getting that, it would be really important to show that you can make more money from what?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to find the other grants that we can partner with this, so that this one-time grant is just working as in-kind.
And then or set up something that generates income.
Yeah. Which is, you can kind of look at, if we did one supersized one, it would kind of possibly grow economy for us, right? But I feel like we have a better chance at showing that we're culturally keeping our culture alive and implementing it into the education sector of our kids. But again, we can do a conglomerate. It doesn't, we could put greenhouses at the schools and do one large one, or do a small co-op in the community. We can do what we want. It's the community ultimately who's gonna let us know what they want implemented. So when we do these evening functions, we're really looking for the community to come out. We had 45 people on Cornwall Island, and the one held this past Wednesday was 165 people. So if you have interest in this project, come on out and let us know what your opinions are.
When are your meetings?
December 5th.
And
in
that will
Snai.
be Snai, at the Snai Rec. And I just wanted to add on, she had mentioned how we're doing weekly Facebook kind of interactions. So this coming week, we're going to be doing, it'll be a giveaway where if you provide some feedback, you'll get a chance to win some NHL tickets to go to a Habs game. So, and we'll be doing another one of those in December as well.
It should be Smart Akwesasne Facebook.
Yep. We share the information. We have the Smart Akwesasne Facebook page, and then we also share on the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne Facebook page.
Are you thinking of adding it
The whole fact that we can't fish here in Akwesasne, where it's not recommended that we eat the fish, is that we can look into options like that. I just recently went to an aquaponics meeting on behalf of this project too, where they're growing fish and then using that fish to fertilize, growing their fruits or their vegetables in the greenhouse. So looking into, it has to be I think to make the project really attractive, it has to be new age technologies, right? So we're focusing mostly on the app being that new age technology. We're going to communicate with everyone through the app. We're going to have everything in there. But if our greenhouses also are the new geothermal solar panel, it makes it that much more attractive. We're advancing. We're advancing and using all this technology, and I'm just trying to get my people to do their traditional culture again, which is kind of cool, I think. So.
All right, well, thank you very much, Rhonda, for providing us with that presentation. All right, so I want to turn to our first update of this afternoon. It's an update on the cannabis work in which the Mohawk Council has been doing. There is a couple members of council that have been working more closely on this. I'll ask if one of those members will provide an update today.
Who are the members?
Okay.
Yeah, there's 3 of us working on it. There's actually, there's multiple components to what being developed in regards to the cannabis. So right now, there's one regarding public safety and education, there's one regarding economic development, and then there's one regarding justice. So this group that we're talking about today is the one that's actually developing the application process for licensing on all aspects from retail to future micro-propagation for commercial distribution to the retail. So it's kind of like an internal mechanism we're designing. So right now it's due to the complexity of this whole new industry that just came into play, it's not quite that easy to develop something within a few weeks or months per se and get it out there to the community. One of the main things we're faced with right now is our geopolitical territory. We have to take into consideration where we sit. And we've got to, there's a lot of components to that area that we're really kind of focusing on. So, we appreciate the community's patience while we develop this. And we're just, to give you a timeline when it would be ready, we're not looking probably until early 2019, January, February, to present something for review in front of the community. So again, we ask that, your patience is requested on our behalf. We're working as quickly as we can, but with the due diligence we have to do on all areas of this, that's what we're kind of faced with, as well as working with the other working groups that are on this.
Who's on the other working groups, public safety and justice, council?
They haven't all entirely been developed yet. So there's the three committees that Edward had spoke about. The one that the members of Carolyn, Connie, Edward, and myself are on are to support the interim regulations that we have now. Over by probably early 2019, we will have these other committees going because we know that there's a huge education component. There's the component to support the interim regulations, and then the ECDEV component that's in that as well.
On the Economic Development Committee, what is the community consultation process that you're looking to implement?
So it hasn't all entirely been defined yet. We do know that we've heard from the community already with respect to the product itself via the survey and some of the discussions we've had at the general meetings already. One of the things that I have continuously said to council and community is that what are the economic opportunities out of the cannabis industry per se that we can find to support the community as a whole. Earlier when we talked about Untitled and talking about how we're going to sustain ourselves, well, what is there an opportunity in the cannabis industry to be able to do that? That's some of the things that the Economic Development Committee would be looking at. Yes.
Why are we waiting so long to do everything in place? Like, time you start everything in place, would you sell over ahead or would you sit in the back? And I don't understand why. Look at that. You're sitting right here. We have the Mohawks, territory of Mohawk, it's like we're here to address this, to make laws, regulations, and cause the need to send the Mohawks. We make our own laws, right, and stuff, so why are you waiting for the government? Why can't you make our own? We go ahead.
Yeah, so we're not waiting for the government. We have enacted our interim regulations. We will be starting the law enactment process for a full law in the new year. But I mean, we arguably are behind the 8 ball because this.
I don't understand. You got business. We should be acting like business for people. Like how can we make this thing benefit all of us? Like you're saying, do not rely on the government. This is the perfect opportunity to make ourselves figure out something. Now we find out everybody.
Yeah, no, and that's why when Edward talked about developing the application process, I mean, that's to support the interim regulations because we want to be able to have, community business persons come forward to come with ideas to generate, economics in the community.
Whose idea was that? Who's all in the business now? Whose idea?
It was council's.
Yeah, but did you guys have a survey when you first started to, if you want an MC involved or not?
We need the community to understand that this, the regulations will support what makes sense economically and socially, and as well as to hold the integrity of our community because we are on a border. So does it make sense to have 5 dispensaries in St. Regis when there's no customs there because it's strictly prohibited in the United States? Mm-hmm. So, we need the community to know that this will not be a free open range market. But at the same time, we want the community to know that we want a system where everybody benefits from this industry, i.e. having, distributors or growers that pay fees into the community that we can show that this is what's, comes from it. Because we know the Tyne-Denegas that exist, there may be 30 of them there. The only people making the money is the owners or the jobs that are created. But the community as a whole does not receive anything. So we don't want that. We don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah, the anything else is like, we do report dispensaries. I want to kick back to their community.
That's right.
We need a right path on the island. We need the soccer field in the crosswalks, the same ones as always say.
Yeah.
The same walk is still there. We need upgrade. We need a freaking splash pad at the arena. We need something for the kids. There's nothing for the kids to do here at all. Great.
Yeah, no, and that's the system we are working to put in there.
MCA should get their own dispensary on. Like, why don't we monopolize that and say, all right, what we're going to do is we'll grow our own stuff, distribute to them, but in the meantime, if they want to get their own stuff, then you tax it.
Yeah. No.
It's not a tax fight, you go back to the community.
Yeah.
It's not that easy.
Everything that you are saying is what the conversation we're having internally, and we're trying, really quickly to put the structure in place. Should we have done it 2 years ago? Absolutely. But we're moving fast now to put it in place.
By the time you're ready to go, it can be like overdue.
We do know that in April this will become legal in Ontario and they'll have their regime rolled out. We want to have ours before then. right? Because there is, you know,
The government doesn't want to run a risk?
no, and it has nothing,
We do ourselves.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Why can't we just
we're not,
run ourselves to, why wait for them?
yeah, we're not waiting for them. And in fact, we want to have it ready before then, because the market that we could potentially have, we want to be able to tap that market before anybody off reserve can source.
Okay, there's another question. Then why didn't, my sister went for, she had her calls in her business plan, and said, we're not taking business plan at this time. Why is that?
Because we haven't defined the process yet, all entirely.
Why though? Like I said, because by the time you get your stuff in order, it's going to be like right over it is. We're going to be, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that.
Yeah, I mean, shoulda, coulda, woulda, I mean, we can't, but we're moving very quickly to ensure those processes are in place.
Let me ask you a question. If we had the license ready in 2 weeks, where's your supplier? Where does your recognized supplier that's going to supply a product that's going to be safe for community consumption?
Everything. Until we get our stuff in order, and we get our own everything, the stuff can be brought in, we just tax and put your tax on it until we get our own, especially going with our own thing. What I'm saying is, if we do a dispensary, because we don't know what the chemicals and all this are sprayed with. So let's do the old way. Like when we grow it, let's use chicken shit. There's fish cuts. There's different things we use that are chemicals that do the same things. You got nitrogen, all the same chemicals that is natural, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's a lot, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of parts, and even if we were to authorize one tomorrow, it's not going to be authorized that they can grow it at home and sell it, because, arguably these things are happening now. So does that make any sense for the government to put out a license when they have no supply, right? So those are the connections we're trying to make sure that our regulatory support that, because we want to have confidence in a product and a regulatory regime that's safe for the community and the consumers, right? So those are the things that we have been working on, to pull together.
So that suddenly that's not you, that nothing to do with that, right?
No.
And it's medical.
No.
7 Leaf is medical.
Yeah,
We have nothing. But the process we're trying to put in place is to ensure, as Grand Chief just mentioned, the safety of the community and all components that there might be a risk. So while you may think we're taking too long to do this, we have to be sitting here looking at all of the risks that are involved and how it applies to our community. So we need to sit and do a thorough. I know people want it yesterday, but we have to do our due diligence to ensure the safety of our community and that all risks have been mitigated in the process. So we are moving along, we are working on it. It won't happen tomorrow, but we are indeed working on it. And it's not only the consumer, it's people that are selling it as well. There's a lot of things involved in this. So saying, I'm going to give you a license, give me a business plan, that's not going to happen for a while. We are working as fast as we can, and we're pulling everything together that ensures our safety of our community.
What do you think they're like?
I can't tell you that. Well, like I said, we're going through it. There'll be 10 today and 20 tomorrow as we do our research and get it up and running. I can't hear you. I wasn't done talking. Yep.
We have seen it there, but the chief regularly calls us, because what happens there is that is a free rein market.
Yeah.
Those businesses do not follow any rules. They do not pay anything to the community. There's no inspection of the product they're putting out, right? I mean, so that is from the government to those business aspects. That's what's happening there.
Yeah.
I mean, do we want that situation here? No, we don't, right? So that's why we're working really quickly to put this in place.
Have it to give back, not to just have to bring it rich off the island.
That's right.
To give back.
That's right.
The whole thing is to self-government, to self-government.
Yeah.
We just do it all ourselves.
That's exactly what we're yes. All right.
You answered it.
Okay. What's over here?
She started,
Go ahead, Laura.
I just want to know if there's a plan by your committee to meet with the legislative commission.
Yep, there is. I mean,
And have soon, because it's urgent.
yeah. Well, we do have the interim regulations are in place, which support for now. I had met with the Legislative Commission about a month and a half ago. There are some memos that we will be sending to them very shortly. So that is part of it. We want that law process to begin, but we also want to make sure that it begins without a preconceived notion of what this is going to look like, and council needs to determine that first.
Just a point of clarification in your report to make sure I'm reading this right, which could lead to my question. On October 4th, you had a call with Ontario Cannabis Secretariat.
Yeah.
And your last line of the page 3 of 12, it says, I also reiterated to the representatives that revenue sharing on cannabis is a topic we wish to further discuss with Ontario, but more so with the federal government. Why would the council entertain revenue sharing if we're trying to deal with nation building and keep our monies here? Just out of curiosity, why would you want to talk to them about revenue sharing?
So, a couple of things, right? I mean, there's a lot, this is it's kind of complicated. There's a lot of moving parts in this. So if we were to say, let's use the cigarette industry as an example, because this is we've learned a lot from that. If we were to have cigarettes here under our authorization, licensed by us that pay a fee to us, but the second they get off the territory, they're getting stopped because they're getting stopped by the province or the federal government. So we need to ensure that the regulatory regimes and the laws that we put in place are also seem with the external laws, because if we have a product that we can't go anywhere with, then there's no sense in having the product. So that's why we want to have conversations with the federal government and the provincial government to ensure that that does not happen. The revenue share, so there is, for authorized producers and potentially dispensaries, there is portions that they will have to pay to the governments, i.e. the province and federal government. We want to be in a position to say that if any product here has to be paid, a fee has to be paid, we want a percentage of it. These are all options we are considering, but to build a system that is in silo, that does not transfer to externally, we're only fooling ourselves that we're not going to have a repeat of the cigarette industry, right? So that we're like, these are all the complicated things. We authorize somebody to grow, we authorize somebody to sell. The second they get onto the main roads, they're stopped, right? So how does that stir an economy in our community? So we want to avoid those situations. Now that sounds highly unlikely, but in cigarettes, it happens all the time, right? So we know this is a learning experience from that. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. So those are all of the moving parts of the work that we are doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that'll make you responsible for the license, right?
Yes.
If you make the license and somebody doesn't abide by that, responsibility doesn't come back on that.
And that's the other thing, right, is that if somebody doesn't have our authorization and the product is leaving the reserve, we want to have the externals to be able to say that you have a product that's not licensed by the Mohawk Council, it's not recognized, therefore it's illegal.
Well, who enforces that?
Well, we would internally, but externally, that's why we want those conversations with the external governments to ensure that they recognize our authority as well.
Well, what I'm saying is that you're building this law and the responsibility of dispensaries or whatever they are, who's working with you right now to enforce that? Is it those...
It would be through our compliance department.
Compliance
yeah.
department.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, but also to include to that, it would also include the law enforcement, police.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that it is a public safety concern.
So without authorization, it is, these scales are illegal as well. So it is, there are penalties that can be had.
Police already have laws.
Go ahead.
I forgot my question. I'm referring to him, I think he wasn't, I don't know, he wasn't asking for a business license in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking for it so he can do his business plan. That might take 6 months or a year. I think that's what he was asking. I'm not sure. We gotta ask him.
No, he's frustrated by the fact that all of these systems to support this is not in place, right? And that's basically what I'm hearing from him. Like, why is it we not opening the door ready to go, right? And the government, arguably 2 years ago, said that they were going to be doing this, right? And now here we are at the 11th hour. Now, how do we get there? We're not going to get into that, but we're trying to make sure that we're we're catching
But I
up.
got the impression that he's just asking for something that so they can start his business plan.
Yeah, I'm just asking why,
That's what he's asking.
why did they say no to the business plan? We're not accepting
Well-
business plans. And right now, when you say that.
Yeah, because we have,
have.
yeah, because we don't have the process established yet to evaluate that and issue the license, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't have a plan ready when we're ready. So don't,
We're ready,
Yeah.
when you're ready to be too late.
we're working really hard. We know that the too late thing is reality. Yes,
Just as to follow up to that then, so if he has a business plan ready, and although the mechanisms aren't all in place yet, couldn't somebody be working with them to go over and make sure every aspect of the business plan would be in compliance to what could be perceived to come down the road so that it's kind of already pre-approved to when your mechanism kicks in? If there's a way for like ECDEP does the business stuff, right? So whoever their staff person is, I forget the title, I don't remember her name who used to do it, but would there be an opportunity for them to have somebody help them review it from front page to back to the end?
we want to make sure that our framework of what our what the real expectations are is developed first, right? As I will tell you that since this frenzy has started, if we were taking it, we probably would have had at least 20 by now. And again, to my comments earlier, if you were to look at a business, market analysis, is there enough people living in Sny and St. Regis that potentially could be users that are not on the American portion to support 5 dispensaries there? No, there's not, right? So, but if we got 10 of them that came in the door, what do? So that's why we're trying to develop that framework to say, maybe it doesn't make sense to have 5 of them there. Maybe it makes sense to have 1 or none. I'm just, throwing this out there. But that's what the Chiefs Committee has been working at. So then, ACDEV can work with the business person and say, this is the framework criteria of what council with the community is looking for.
Abram,
Yes.
like when it really boils down to it, like what's one business model versus another business model, the difference going to be? Everybody just wants to sell a product.
That's right.
Like, I don't see what the difference between mine and Eric's is going to be. We just want to sell a product to people coming through our territory. There ain't going to be 10,000 other different things going on. Like, it makes it sound like every business is going to be scrutinized through what you're going to sell. And it's like, when it boils down to the guys that I've been talking to, they just want to sell a product to people crossing the territory. But we want MCA's help when they get to the customer.
That's right. And that's part of the work we're doing, right? But does it make sense to have 5 of those guys on the island, one beside each other, right? That's kind of what we're trying to figure out.
But MCA shouldn't cover, but if a guy wants to invest money, and there's already 3 different shops, I know out of goodness of your heart, you say, well, think about what you're doing, but you shouldn't be babysitting that guy either. If he wants to do it, let him do it. If he fails, he fails.
Yeah, no, good point. Back over here, yes.
So the whole thing is a tax issue. So you can't really advertise tax-free giggles here because it's going to be taxed, right? It's going to be taxed to the province and the federal government when it goes through the...
No, it wouldn't really be a tax issue. What the big issue is public safety is what's really slowing the process down. By reason that if you have established, if you're going to open up a business and sell cannabis, well, that's all you're going to be able to sell out of there. You can't have a convenience store and then have that on a shelf because now you're attracting children. This is the whole thing. And then going back to the earlier question was, where are you going to get it from? Who is the authorized supplier? Because at the end of the day, it boils down to liability. Like
the thing is that it's a dispensary, right? I mean, kids can't go in the dispensary. You go through Colorado and now through the western states. They have them all over the place. And, kids aren't allowed in there. It's like having a bar. You can't have kids going into a bar. You're not going to, you're going to sell, they sell cookies and all kinds of stuff. Tax and giggles, they call it.
But the reason they're not able to go in there, and the reason why they can't, is because there's laws that support it, and there's regulations and checks and balances in place, right? If we just let business ones do what they want, how do we control those risks?
My
But that's
if
the
you got
morally,
three
that's the morally as
businesses
well.
Side by side, and some fail, so, you know, that's what he's saying.
Yeah, no, I get that component, but,
Get the control
yeah.
and use the police. Police already have the laws in place to govern abuse of intaking drugs and alcohol. That's already done. The criminal code is there. The police. So what we're talking about is your municipal bylaw, right? So you're going to use police for that. And
That's
other
a law.
than the compliance officer, I mean, police already have their job.
There's a lot more involved here. The one thing is that we have to clarify the location of the business, right? I don't want it 20 feet away from my grandchildren's school and their playground, or we don't want one right next door here to the recreation or any recreation, the arena. We have to take that into consideration. How far, how are we going to zone away from our children, keep them safe? The other thing is, in these businesses, they also have to have security. So we have to make sure that they have a secure facility, so we don't have anybody breaking in there and walking off with their product. We also have to take a look at where are they getting their product from. We have to ensure that it's a safe product. In April of 2019 is when the government is going to be able to sell to dispensaries or businesses. That's seeds, and that's the seedlings if somebody wants to grow, and also for businesses, because you're not, right now, all you're allowed to buy is 30 grams per person. But a business will be able to purchase a larger amount, and it comes packaged, and it's all weighed out and things like that. So there's a lot of things, and my main concern is to ensuring that our children, our teens are safe. And so we have all of these aspects that we have to take in. It's not a matter of just sitting down and saying, okay, well, we want their name and their phone. It's more intense. So we want to make sure that our community is safe, and we want to make sure that we have all of our criteria is clear, so that when these businesses do open up, then we don't have to backpedal. I think Tyendinaga is backpedaling right now. They have so many businesses open, and they're calling us to find out how are you doing this, so we don't want to do that. So we want to make sure that the application is clear. It's we got all our bases covered. And that's it.
Yeah. Just a timeline again, just on when you think that you're going to be ready for applications, because just in the newspaper article with Dunn Miracle, people quoted as saying that they didn't have the regulations ready, and the community members started opening stores, and then it blew up like wildfire. But it sounds the way I'm hearing all this bureaucracy being so dumped on us, it almost seems like it's going to be 2 years from now before we're allowed to. And that's what's going to happen is, same thing that happened in Tyendinaga is going to happen here. It's going to blow up, boom, 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 and then we're going to be back having, like somebody just said, that, well, we kind of dragged our feet a bit on this bureaucracy. Now there's 15 dispensaries.
Okay.
That's what's going to happen. So time is of the essence on this thing.
I can answer to that because we have a regulation out right now. It is a criminal act to open up a dispensary that's not licensed through MCA. The other thing is business owners who go ahead and do that, they could jeopardize their future license. So I would be very weary of doing that. We don't want to see that happen. We don't want these businesses popping up all over the place, right?
Peace pipe,
Why their job doing it, he's going to long homes, right? He's not doing it tonight, he's long homes, right now he's not, what's here, he's dispensary.
We were wondering who was doing that, so we are.
I talk about people, the same things. You're not looking for mind, nothing. So
But-
they're like, well, let's take off everything off MCA and go to the long homes.
Yeah.
And she's got to answer.
No, we do.
You're not doing that stuff for you.
Back to the comment about the bureaucracy. We do have the interim regulations, which allows for this, right? We want to be able to be in a position before April 1st to have businesses licensed under the interim regulations, right? We're working really hard for that because then at that point the market could be gone because Cornwall will have 2, 3 of them or whatever it may be. You know, with the unauthorized, that's why when we talked earlier about working with the feds and the provinces, sure, you could sell all right there, right? But when they leave this community because of how we're located, they're going to get stopped because there's no authorization, right? So that's the challenge they will face there. You know, we're very conscious of all of these factors. We just want to make sure that it's not a haphazard regime, or not regime, but structure that we're going into. So we're working very fast. We want to have by April 1st, you know, licensed dispensaries by the Mohawk Council.
So Abram, that comment about it being enforced by maybe compliance or Mohawk police, like, is that a true statement? Because Mohawk police won't even assist on an eviction with MCA in their houses. So they're going to come in my door and they're going to try to stop my business, even though they won't enforce that. Like, it's been known for years that they won't enforce that community law. So is what she mentioned, does that mean there's an outside agency that's going to come in and tell us what we're not going to do or what we're going to do?
No, that's not.
That's kind of what it sounded to me like.
If there's a dispensary that's sitting there unauthorized with, you know, they probably don't have just 30 grams there, which means they have pounds sitting there, right? So in possession of pounds of marijuana is prosecutable. It's illegal, right? So that's what we are relying on in these situations at this point.
But she mentioned that she's going to be enforcing one of your laws.
Yeah, through the compliance,
Police won't enforce a housing.
through the compliance aspect, right? So once they're authorized, to ensure that they're complying with it. It's from the compliance to the non-authorized altogether is where kind of, you know, it's who enforces what. So over here and then back over here.
So just so I'm clear, in this community, the medical license that's been issued to Suddenly is under Health Canada's licensing regime. They will not be allowed to sell to anybody in this community their product as far as it being sold as recreation, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, on the recreational side of it, you're saying compliance plus the Akwesasne and Mohawk police will do the enforcement component under recreation?
Compliance will do the compliance under the interim regulations.
Yeah.
If there are unauthorized, it potentially could be criminal matters.
Okay, thank you.
I want to go back to with regard to what Caroline had introduced with regard to zoning. When is Mohawk Council going to establish a zoning law? And it's not, shouldn't be just exclusive to this law.
Yeah, currently right now it's not a priority. But having said that, there are some components of that built into some of the work that Peter Garrett was doing. So when we talk about what Carolyn was talking about, we'll have to build it into the law specific for this product as we move as a community to build a zoning regulations potentially.
Yeah, that tobacco project that Jim Ransom was running down on Hamilton's Island, where he was working with the province, is that dead or is that still?
What was his comment, please?
That tobacco project, remember that we had with Jim Ransom on Hamilton's Island? I want to know if that's dead.
So is portfolio able to answer that? I don't know.
At this time, because of the new change in government, Doug Ford conservative, there's been really no communication yet on that.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
So there's nothing moving on that anymore. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to, on the cannabis, end the discussion here. We will, in the new year, have specific meetings to talk about this. We will continue to keep the community updated as this moves along. The business aspect and the opportunities that could be had from the cannabis industry is on our minds, and it is on the forefront. And the timelines of April 1st is blaring in our face. So we're doing the best that we can to make sure that we meet that. Because we do not want to be in a position of other communities. We also do not want to be in a position where we're now trying to do something that we lost the market and there's no opportunity we have, right? So we know this.
Just as a suggestion, if turnout is lower at focus meetings, could you allow for more time for discussion at general meetings as you have better turnouts?
Yeah.
If the numbers, you know what I mean, match,
No,
then
absolutely.
allow for more discussion time on this because it seems to be an obvious concern to the regulatory side of where you end up, that more discussion from the community.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we're going to turn to business from the floor. I'll ask that any members that want to speak to please let me know. We'll just go in the back first and then I'll make my way forward.
Yeah, I just wanted to say we have a paper that we put out once a month or whatever, and in it tells about all your activities, what you've done and what you've passed and all this. Well, I noticed you passed a lease on Hamilton Island, and I was wondering, was that lease, was that given to a Hula or a white one? That was in your last thing that you passed another lease for Hamilton Island.
Not, without having to look at it directly, and we'd have to check on the date. I couldn't tell you if it was in Ngahuna or not.
Passed an MCR, I would assume that you guys, that's what you did. I'm just asking for a little more detail because at the last general district meeting, I had mentioned to Edward that they were having, in this, I'm sure people are aware of that home finder. They had for a while, they had Hamilton Island.
Okay.
They had a house there that was on sale on Hamilton Island, advertised here.
Okay.
And it was for sale for, I don't know, $249,000, 3-bedroom, whatever, and all that. And my question at the district meeting, as I'm sure everyone will remember, is why are we continuing to support white people on Hamilton Island, and they're not even supposed to be there as permanent residents, they're supposed to be cottages. And I don't know how many permanent residents we got on Hamilton Island. And I wanted to find out, was that lease, again, reassigned to a white person or a native person? Can someone please find that out, please? Because that's not right. You're talking about moving forward and doing this and that with our land, and we can't even get our own lands back from the white people that have been there for decades, and they were never supposed to be there full-time. They were supposed to be cottagers, not full-time congregation. You know, why are and Edward said, well, we've got something over them, because if they want to sell it, they're on the island, it's up to us to renew the lease or not. Well, I noticed that there was another lease renewal. And I think any action that goes on Hamilton Island should immediately be known to people on the reserve. Anything. If there's a sale going on, or if there's a potential sale going on, we should be the first ones. Not white people and civil servants in a home finding out through the papers. We should be finding out through our own sources. So someone can, Edward, if you don't mind finding out.
Yeah, I can look at that, but to refresh my memory on this one, when I indicated we had something over on them, that was an indication of the process that a current leasee, when it comes up for renewal, they had to go in front of council. That was the renewal process.
You said also if the land gets put up for sale.
Yeah,
because that lease has to be renewed.
Yeah, to the new purchaser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens is just a normal process, other than, I don't know the particulars on the one you're talking about. So when somebody wants to sell a home on Hamilton Island, they have to advertise in Akwesasne first. So you'll see them in the Indian Times saying, house for sale, Hamilton Island, lot number, blah, blah, blah. If there are no interested persons, then they will advertise in, through realtors or whatever it may be that the document that you have. So what happens is when somebody buys a cottage or a home on Hamilton Island, they assume the lease that they're buying they assume the term of the lease that they're buying from the person that they're purchasing the home from. So if you go buy a home there and they have 5 years left on their lease, they are getting the 5 years lease. What happens is when that lease term ends, it's renewed by the Mohawk Council for 15 years. That's the normal, that's the process of Hamilton Island leases.
But I thought that is you're continuing to give these leases though to non-native
Yes.
people. That has to stop.
We,
That was never meant for them to be there full-time in the first place. And I've heard a council member already say that they dropped the ball on that. They dropped the ball. We should have no permanent residents on Hamilton Island. Do you agree or disagree?
No, I agree. There's only 17 authorized to be there though.
How many full-time though?
No, that's 17, I believe, that are able to be there all year round. The rest are all seasonal.
Well, that has to stop.
The conversation that council just in general has always had about Hamilton Island is that if we were to terminate the leases, then what do we do, right? Because they would actually have to move their homes, but it does generate, $400,000, well, $400,000 or $500,000 annually for the community and services, right? So, that's the discussion that we have always had around the table. Now, whether we have action on any of it, to this point, no. So they continue to be renewed. We would have to go to the community and start having a conversation about long-term planning of Hamilton Island. Now, have we done that? No. That's kind of the state of where it's at. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, should we be occupied, should our people be living on the Hamilton Island? Absolutely, right? I mean, but again, too, though, in the conversations that we have had, in my time at least being on council, there is a talk about, putting an Alders facility out there, which sounds really great. But if you actually think about it, when we drive from exactly where we are here now to Hamilton Island, it's probably about 45 minutes. So does somebody want to move, drive 45 minutes to see their grandmother? When you talk about, ensuring we're integrating with our elders and they're taken care of, doesn't always make sense. The other thing is that as we continue to, if we occupy, it means now we've, arguably come up with a fourth area of the community that we have to maintain and support. We have a hard time doing that in the 3 that we have now. So these are all of the things that, we have talked about conceptually over the years. Now, if the community says, you know what, it's time to start using it, it's time to invest money in there, put new roads in there, put our people in there, put infrastructure in there, we can start doing that, right? But it has to be, we have to understand the bigger picture. That's kind of, Hamilton Island in a nutshell.
The last person that I know bought a home or out Hamilton Island is Romaine Mitchell.
Yeah.
That might be the case here.
There's actually 3 members of Akwesasne living on Hamilton Island, and I think they're all year round. So of the 17 I talked about earlier, 3 of them are there all year round. There are people. Yes.
We all know housing is an issue in our community, especially affordable housing on the territory. So prior to the election, one of the general meetings, portfolio holder Chief Lazar there mentioned that the council was in talks with the banks and CMHC, I believe, might have factored into it. So I went to the Bank of Montreal and I asked for $1 million loan to build, I just called them condos on the island here, on the land I own, and they said, well, we'll let you talk to our commercial loans officer. And I asked what the process was, and I asked whatever became of council speaking to you about commercial loans, and they said council never got back to them because they had since gone over to a case populaire to have discussions. I just would like an update because I think you mentioned at some point there may be opportunity for a community member to go after, wasn't sure, but with CMHC to work with them to get higher amounts versus like a $200,000 type loan versus $1 million. Could I just get maybe a brief update on where your discussions are and what can the community expect in the future for you guys to help us out to go after some loans and stuff?
Okay, for your first question, yes, we are talking to other institutes right now. We did jump on board with First Nation Market Housing. Unfortunately, they have their feelers out to become a approved lender with First Nation market housing, which will increase the funding that we can get to build housing. One of the discussions that we had with the Bank of Montreal, the Bank of Nova Scotia, is when you become into a commercial part, which is over 4 units, a bank will not lend money to build a commercial property on the reservation. You can only go up to a 4-unit apartment building. So that is one of the things that we kind of pushed off the table because it jumps us into a different bracket and it becomes another department of the loans which goes into the commercial side. So right now, we have 5 institutes that we are talking to, and right now, Bank of Nova Scotia just met with us, and I spoke with First Nation Market Housing last 2 weeks ago in Vancouver, and they're reaching out to those institutes that are on board, and I told them Bank of Nova Scotia was interested, and they're going to be reaching out to them to give them their policies and review it, and a lot of the things what's holding a lot of the things up is the legal part of it. Their lawyers have to look at the contracts, they have to look at all the legal parts of it because they're lending money on the reservation. They want to make sure that they can recover any losses that's on the reservation. And so they're looking at the policies and making sure that they can recoup any losses that's occurred on a reservation. So right now, unfortunately, it's not going as fast as we would like it, but it is moving along and there is other institutes jumping on board.
But is that like for $1 million loan type thing for individuals?
We haven't jumped to that number. The highest number that I've seen is 200,000.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you, appreciate it.
Yes, right here.
I have a question on our laws, our bylaws on this. I have one example. It's called a bingo ordinance. It's a law, right, or a bylaw. On here it says, it shall be unlawful for anyone to perform, conduct, operate, maintain, or supervise a bingo game or a series of bingo games except, or we say Mohawk comes up Akwesasne. It says beer calls of St. Louis band. The name's been changed, like MCA. And then it also says all persons involved in the conduct of games must be bona fide employees of MCA or the contractor.
Okay.
So is that being enforced or is bylaw?
The bingo bylaw?
Yeah.
There's no bingo halls though here.
Right here.
I know, but there's no bingo halls here to enforce it. I believe they have a permit to operate.
There's no provision in here that they can get a permit. It says the only one that can conduct bingo games is Mohawk Council.
We'll have to look
There's
into
no
it.
provision in here whatsoever that says
We'll have to
have to be employees of MCA.
we'll have to research what the authorization is. Yeah, no, I mean with respect to CKLN, I mean we'll have to find out.
And then the other thing on here is it says in your oath of office, it says, further, I swear to support and defend all laws and customs of the community of Akwesasne. I will faithfully and impartially carry out the duties of my office to the best of my ability. And I will strive to promote the best interest of the people of Akwesasne. Edging schedule and Akwesasne election.
Okay. So you're talking us enforcing the bingo law? Is that what you're saying?
All laws.
Yeah.
Every law. We don't have to do the laws.
We do our best to uphold all of the laws that are in the community. We don't have any bingo halls here for that.
Which one was the last one that was enforced?
Oh, well, I'm not sure directly which one. I mean, if you want me to go make inspections on the bingo hall because I swore the oath.
I'm not talking about bingo, I'm talking about CKON bingo. None of them are employees of contract.
Not that I'm aware of.
So they're in violation of this.
They're not a bingo hall though.
That says specific to a bingo hall.
They're not a bingo hall.
I know, but they might just read it.
So we can take back, the question that you're asking, we can take back to take a better analysis. We're not in a position right at this moment to make a
Can I have
determination.
you read it? Maybe you didn't understand what I was
He's talking about section 2 of it under operations. It shall be unlawful for anyone to perform, conduct, operate, maintain, or supervise a bingo game or a series of bingo games, except the Iroquois of Sandwich Band.
And what year is that bylaw?
1984.
1984. So perhaps before that law was passed, there was authorization given to CKON? I don't know. We will have to look.
That won't matter.
We will have to
Once
look
another
into
law
it.
comes into effect, they have to comply with all the...
Okay. Well, we will review and research what you're saying, and we can report that back.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I had an MP, a member of parliament, at the lodge speaking on this week. And one of the things I'm asking for is, years back we had a survey in the community. And one of the top priorities of the survey was to look into having a healing lodge or a treatment center. So I was just wondering, which department would I go to for the information in that survey? Because I remember it was out.
Anybody have a response to that? Help, perhaps?
I'm sorry, I know a little bit about your proposal from my previous work experience, because the Independent First Nation received a copy and we were trying to make connections for you on the health side, so I'm not up to date with it exactly as to what information you're looking for, but if it's is it like background information for...
Yeah, because we put a business plan together, and then later on we did a proposal. We did a proposal to Mohawk Council, a settlement agreement.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, and in there, Kylie was working for me, economic development at the time, and she put a survey in there. And the survey said, and I remember one of the meetings I went to, they asked the priorities, what the community wants, and this and that. And one of the top priorities was a healing lodge. So I'm looking for that information on that healing lodge, on that survey.
Oh, so you want information on that survey itself?
The results.
To show the high priority, so I can introduce it to the...
Okay.
Okay, so if that was a survey that was done by the community trustee, the trust settlements,
I think it was done by the Mohawk County.
Okay, I'll have to look into that and I'll see if I can find out which exact survey it was. I'll speak with Kylie, see if she remembers, and then, yeah, we'll get an answer back to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
I was coming to work the other day and the snow hit, and I know the lighting's not all done over there on that corridor, but it looks like it's an accident waiting to happen because you couldn't see the lines whatsoever. And cars, there was an 18-wheeler literally on the sidewalk, riding the sidewalk. When we have concerns about what's going on in that corridor, who should we be directing them to other than, I don't know who's got the portfolio for us.
Yeah, we're aware of the issues that have been arising at the corridor right now. The lines have been put in. There's traffic lights that are going to be installed shortly. I just got that complaint about somebody running through while people are pulled over to clean off their car. Yeah, that's an issue too. So temporarily, I'm going to see if we can put back those oversized stop signs so that it can be clearly visible to everybody. Because I myself almost got hit there before, and I was astonished at what's going on over there when we first started this consultation to revamp the corridor. That the District of Gowanoga didn't want traffic lights over there. And now that the construction's almost completed, we're almost home with that, and these incidents are happening all over the place. So that, to me, as a district chief, identifies that those street lights, those traffic lights have to go in. You know, it's a safety issue, and some of those people traveling through there right now are probably beyond the speed limit. When construction was going on, when we're utilizing the service roads, they put it at 40 kilometers an hour. I said, right off the hop, I just dropped that down. You put 40 on there, they want to do 50. I said, so they dropped it back down to, I think they went to 25 or 30 on that right off the hop, yes. And I also asked chief of police to see if the police department can be more visible in that area, because it is a construction site and people need to abide by all the construction rules and regulations. But we're working on that. I can follow up and see when the exact date of the traffic lights installation will take place, because they're almost done. They did up the lighting now. As far as snow removal concerns, I can bring that up with the Seaway Authority to see that they clear out all the roadway, not just the laneways, so all those lines are all visible to everybody, so they can abide by the roadway.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over here, yeah, and then we'll come back over here.
I have a question or something assistance required from council. It's, I know I brought this up at one of our district meetings some time ago about Quebec taxes. I know when you go shop in Quebec, when you try to use your status card, they won't accept it because you have to use your money wallet. So I know I had asked, is that something in which schools are working more with the Quebec government? And I know there's some sort of an agreement with the Quebec cabinet and Mohawk that it's only for them. We're trying to get that open. And then the other one I have a concern is we still have a partnership with the city of Cornwall, right, on business, how to, improve services to Akwesasne. I know for those of us in science beverages, we're having a really difficult time with businesses in Cornwall delivering, and it all has to do with the border issue. So I don't know if there's something you can set up a network in Cornwall to try to see why is that such a big problem now. It's gotten worse for the last 6-12 months.
Since we got a Twitter president, that's why. Since they got a Twitter president, it's gotten worse. Does anybody want to respond to this?
Yeah, the issue with the taxation in Quebec, that was something that was brought to the attention of the IC, the Iroquois communities, Iroquois caucus, and we addressed it to Ganawage reps that were sitting there at the time, because it wasn't really, we kind of scolded it. He says, why are you going into a tax agreement with the Quebec government that restricts our uses of our tax exemptions in the province of Quebec? I use myself as an example. I can go to Florida and get tax exempt products. I can go to British Columbia and my tax exempt cards are, Indian status cards are being honored, but I go to the province of Quebec because the agreement that you made restricts us from getting my tax exemptions. So it's, to us right now, I think that's should be put at the Iroquois caucus level, so that all the Iroquois caucus communities can tackle this as a whole, not as one community at a time. It's because it just bogs everything right down. But if all First Nations communities that are part of the Iroquois caucus are saying this, and then they'll address it more formally because it's coming from a community of southern communities, Mohawk communities that are to be addressing this tax issue. As far as the other issue that you have, we met a couple of times with the Chamber of Commerce, and what they told us at the time was to identify the store, the cashier, their address, give them that information, and they'll look into why they're not honoring our status card. And it was also brought to our attention with Walmart, there's fraudulent tax cards being used at Walmart right now. And we're about, so we go on this. We do a workshop with Walmart, tell them what status cards to honor and what fraudulent cards look like. Then they might turn around and say, well, it's easier if we don't take any status cards at all. So we have to be cautious on how we proceed with this. So I think the right thing to do is actually go at the Cornwall Chamber of Commerce to address these issues with them. And as far as delivery services that you're talking about, yeah, that's an ongoing issue. It's been always an issue, and it seems to be getting worse and worse. It's because the President of the United States is now enforcing that these laws and bylaws and highway usage taxes are imposed, and limitations are coming into play on everything that we're doing. And where we're exempt from it is we have to declare that we're only in transition. We're not leaving it in the United States. And the Port Authority right now is recognizing that, and they're not levying all these charges on us. But there's certain parts that's out of their jurisdiction that they have to do. And then when that happens, it makes it harder for our suppliers to get through, to give us those deliveries. So they're elected not even to bother coming anymore. So it's a hardship that we're aware of, and I think we need to get a task force together to start tackling some of these issues, not just leaving it on the shoulders of individuals.
So we will, we'll get a follow-up item specifically on the Quebec tax thing and why that's happening and what some of the options may be. There is a new government in Quebec who is just kind of being orientated as we speak. So we will ensure that, that's something we chat with them about, as well as what Chief Thompson has said about the Iroquois Caucus. We have recently just written the Saint Mohawk tribe and outlined a number of border concerns and challenges and issues that we have. We're asking for their assistance in finding solutions or exemptions in Washington. So we will be having a meeting with them in the very near future to discuss strategy, because there has been, even though we've been plagued by the border issues transiting through to St. Regis or SNI, it's gotten worse. And since this U.S. administration has chosen to act a little bit differently. So we want the tribe to assist with us. So your concerns are noted, and we will continue to find solutions.
Thank you.
Yep, there was over here, yes.
I have a question for Vince. The safety of our people, for our pedestrians at the crossroads. I noticed yesterday when I was going to work, there was this lady, an elderly lady was walking, and there's no road, no markings where she's gonna walk. So with the storm, if you don't see her, she's wearing a black jacket and a hat, somebody could easily run her right over. I think that needs to be addressed like Monday and get those markings in where they're gonna be walking, because I've seen people running just to get to jobs, to buy a loaf of bread. It needs to be done as soon as possible.
There's walking lanes designed over there, so if you're asking for those...
They need the signs to show our elderlies.
Paintings, then I can move forward with that.
We need to do that as soon as
See if that can get
possible.
done as soon as possible.
All right, now,
Thank you.
Vince, just on that Ganawagi agreement, do you know if that's in perpetuity? If you can find out, because if it isn't, then what role does the Iroquois Caucus have to take who they negotiated with and make it a normal thing? If the agreement's not written in perpetuity.
Well, the thing that I'm aware of, what they negotiated was they're not even following those negotiation terms anyways either. So I don't even know if it holds any weight yet, but we're restricted by it. So that was my real big issue. Who are they to make an agreement with the province of Quebec when they didn't consult Akwesasne on it, when 2/3 of our territories in Quebec? So that's the issue I have with them.
Can we get a copy of that made available for the public to look at?
We can reach out to them and see if they
I believe it's online as well, but we will have it for the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other items from the floor? Yes.
What's going on with the border issue? Trains going across, I left the island, I pulled up and they asked, have you or your vehicle been to the United States? I said, no. So we stopped, they put him apart, I'm checking him. I said, walk him down, you can't check me. Oh, I can do where I want. So he came to my truck, opened my doors, looked at my glove box, my center console, everything. But why? Why can he do that? I don't understand why. And he said, we're the customer, we can do what we want. Why is that? That's bullshit. It's not just me, that's me, everybody, my girlfriend. Everybody gets harassed for it. Oh, we can do what we want. So the LLC has you or your vehicle come from the States. After that, then we're searching. It's an ongoing issue with everybody. And all the rest of the building, I don't know how many calls you get, there's too much harassment going on and nothing being done. What's being done? What about our Indian league? What's that Indian league going on? Like, what's being done?
Well, that's an update that we've been asking for. There was talks about domesticated land for people coming from Illinois back to Cornwall. And that's an ongoing issue. They presented it to us, so we're waiting for next steps on that. And the other one is, with your issue there, is because of the designation of a mixed corridor. They had that right. And they gave that designation from the federal government themselves without consulting us. And that's what gives them that right to give you secondary inspection, even though you're coming from.
Yeah, that's what they ordered.
I thought that's what they did. That was our argument with them from day one. It was our argument with them from last term.
Why don't we just
going forward?
Well, American Bridge, if we replace it next 2020?
Yeah.
Why don't we just get rid of it?
Well, that's what the discussions are. Right now, they're doing pre-clearance. They got authorization to do pre-clearance before anything leaves the country and enters another country. It's pre-cleared.
Like uptown, I was, the report here, I got.
Can I finish?
I'm sorry.
They're doing pre-clearance authorizations where anything coming from one country to another country, they're pre-clearing it before it comes into the country, so they don't have to do it again. That's already being done, and I've also been aware that the American border agencies can also carry firearms on other foreign soils. So now that's going to go vice versa, where the Canadian officials can do the same thing. So once that happens, and then maybe now we're getting closer to actually moving that customs to the country. It's not going to happen overnight.
And then after that, I'm just saying, if you say, right now, they're doing what they want. They say what they want, and we abide by it. I'm saying, if we come and say, well, if you guys don't respect us and give us that leave and stop harassing us, we'll take that bridge out, and then what, one of the coast down? Maybe then they'll say, well, okay, they're gonna take the bridge out, then what's happening for them? We got coast down, and, well, okay, well, let's come out here and ask them what they want. I mean, we have to do something.
Well, we're being diplomatic about it, you know, and right now they seem to control the time.
And ultimatum,
you know? Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a whole different issue. Like, since I've retired, I've got a lot of people in the community contacting me. There's an issue with the process internally in trying to get anything heard. Like, people have complaints with policing, they have complaints with housing, they have complaints with health. And, you know, I just guide them along, go do this. You know, I said, I'll take it. I have an issue with policing too, and I'll see what happens. And every step of the way, they said, this isn't going to happen because they're going to stop it. I wanted to go in front of the commission and address accountability, transparency to the commission. And I was denied. First of all, I was put on the back burner and I waited for 90 days. And I was like, how come I can't get in there? I requested to go in front and speak. So, after a long period of time waiting, I decided, okay, let's file a complaint with council. So I filed a complaint with council and they sent me back to the commission. I said, I've already gone that way. And everybody that was coming around to me are saying, this is what's going to happen. So that did happen. So I'm bringing it to your attention that there's a problem with accountability for people to file complaints in certain departments. So that's what this is for. You guys are elected to look after the community. If there's a problem and you can't address it with the administrative part, then we bring it to council's attention. Okay?
There's service complaints process.
That's exactly right here.
Christy.
Service complaint, yes.
Christy Lozon?
Yeah, a lot of back talk.
Okay.
Get nowhere, right back to the same problem. So I'm bringing it to your attention that when we hit this level, and we bring it to council, well, we should be talking about this. I don't know who the portfolio holders are for those different departments.
Did you go directly to the director of the department? Did you complain to the
Jordan?
director? No, Jordan is the executive director.
Right.
He's also a director of each program, each department.
Been there. I went through the whole process and I was showing everybody and they said, no, you're not going to get anywhere. I said, what do you mean? This is the process. So there's an internal process and looking at the community needs. So if they're not answering to the community, then why are they there? We're obligated to this community, right? I'm part of this community. If I got a problem and I can't address it, then there's a problem here somewhere.
So we'll take that you've asked for a meeting with the commission. We'll follow up with that and find out why they won't meet with you. As far as just complaints in general, generally, unless there's authorization by somebody who wants somebody to advocate on their behalf, because you said that people come to you with complaints, they have to authorize you to act on their behalf, right? So we have instituted a service complaint policy that we have accepted, but it's in the process of implementation right now because we know that complaints go unheard, complaints go unanswered, and sometimes people feel that complaining gets you nowhere or they get no response, right? So we have a policy in place. We're in the process of implementing that now because complaints, there is a place for them, and people should be held accountable for actions that are outside of the norm or outside of the policy. So that's really our response into that. You specifically will get portfolio to follow up with you and find out why.
Okay, who's the portfolio?
Who's public safety?
Okay,
Connie. So there's two of them here that have identified. They can speak to you after the meeting.
okay.
Yes.
I think we already have it in this. Is there anybody from Justice that could maybe explain to us the process for our complaint?
Well, there's two parts, right? There's a service complaint policy that we have for if your service was poor, denied, not right. But what he specifically talked about is asking for a meeting with a body that is appointed by council. So that's a bit different. That's why we'll have to follow up.
What's the difference?
The difference is that council appoints a body to do a function, and if they're not doing that function, then we have to hold them accountable. But we have to find out why they won't meet with him. Maybe they don't have it in their charter.
People that he went to work.
Yeah, the people that he went to, yes. We have to find out first. That's what he's bringing to our attention. And then when the two portfolios, we'll get information from him and then follow up and find out why. And if there should be meeting with him, then we will, tell them that they should be meeting with him. If there's a reason why they didn't, then we'll try to give an explanation. And if it's not right, we'll investigate.
And they will fall under that respect policy?
The service complaint policy? Not necessarily, because in this case, they're a commission that's appointed by council. It's a bit different. Okay. Was there anything else that we wanted to cover? Okay. All right, so I have a resolution that I need to read for the record, and it says to accept and approve the attached general meeting minutes of October 25th, 2018. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Carolyn, second by Julie. Discussion on it? Question has been called on the resolution. All in favor of the resolution? Any against the resolution? None so noted. So there's just a couple announcements that we wanted to make this afternoon. That there will be no general meeting next month for the month of December. So we're having our November one today. As well, though, we'll be having a number of open houses. We've started annually having open houses at the Mohawk Council. So on November 27th is at the Ganadigo School. November 28th is at the Akwesasne Mohawk School. And the Akwesasne School is November 29th. These are all in the evening at 5 to 7. That's to learn more about the programs, ask questions of the directors and the service, the frontline workers, and to learn more about the programs that the Mohawk Council delivers. Also in December, we will be having, again, our MCA community dinners that we've been having for the last number of years. So on December 10th in Ganadigo, December 13th at Akwesasne, and December 17th here in Gawanoga. So those are community dinners. Well, all of you are welcome to bring your family. We'll have Santa Claus there, be taking photos, and those are in the evening from 5 to 7 p.m. As well, there will be no district meetings for the month of December. So I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening, and we will adjourn for today. So, thank you.
Sister, my 102-year-old sister sends her best wishes from Alberta.
Oh, thank you. All right. Could I have a motion to adjourn?